Hello, everyone. Tonight we're going to do something just a little bit unsettling. You're going to take a quiet walk through the back alleys of Plague era Europe. The air is thick, heavy with the smell of rot and something metallic you can't quite place. You can hear the distant creak of wooden cart wheels, and maybe if you're lucky, you won't have to see what they're carrying. Your shoes squelch in things you don't ask about. You pull your scarf a little higher, not that it helps. The buildings lean in around you, sagging with age and disease, whispering with the history of a time most people would rather forget. And you, yes, you are here for one reason only, to follow a certain masked figure. Tall, draped in black, with a strange bird-like mask that juts out from his face, he moves slowly down the cobbled street ahead. And yes, you really did choose this bedtime story. Bold move. Hey, if you're loving this content, I'd really appreciate it if you could give the video a quick like and hit that subscribe button. Tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trail the plague doctor at a respectful distance. His silhouette is unmistakable, wide-brimmed hat, dark overcoat, and that long, almost theatrical beak. You wonder why it doesn't bob up and down when he walks. Is it attached to his face somehow? You don't want to get close enough to find out. Around you, the world is strangely quiet. Even the birds seem to know this is not the time for song. The doctor stops near a crumbling doorway and kneels beside a bundle that might have been a person. You don't watch too closely. You're not here for the drama. You're here to snoop in his pockets. You inch closer. This walk, your walk, isn't just through the past. It's through layers of superstition, desperation, and weirdly innovation. Because as creepy as this guy looks, he's part of a long history of humans trying to figure out how not to die horribly. Spoiler alert, they were mostly unsuccessful. But oh, did they try. The plague in all its variations was no joke. Bubonic, pneumonic, septicemic, these were the VIP guests at humanity's least favorite surprise party. People dropped where they stood. Entire towns vanished. Panic. That was the air they breathed. Enter the plague doctor. Not quite a real doctor, not quite a priest, and definitely not someone you'd want giving you a massage. He was a figure of both fear and faint hope. And as you walk behind him now, you realize his whole job was just to witness. He wasn't curing. He wasn't even treating, really. He was there to record, to observe, maybe to poke around a bit with dubious tools. Think medieval clipboard with side effects. A cat slinks by, eyes glowing in the twilight. It gives the plague doctor a wide berth. Smart cat. You notice something strange about the way he moves. His steps are deliberate, but not unsteady. Almost like he's used to walking through death. Which, to be fair, he probably is. And his coat, oh the coat. It's waxed black heavy looking, designed to repel bad air or what they called miasma. That's right before they discovered germs. People thought disease floated around like invisible evil fog. So naturally, you fight it with leather. Obviously, you catch a whiff of something floral. Weird, right? But it's coming from him. A faint trail of herbs and maybe rosewater. It doesn't smell safe, but it smells like someone tried. He turns a corner, and you follow. People rarely approached plague doctors unless they had no other choice. They were grim omens, harbingers of bad news. But tonight you're breaking the rules. You're here to explore the strange cargo this man carries not on his back, but in his pockets. What did he tuck away? What did he think would protect him, save others? Cure the incurable. You'll find lancets and leeches, sure, but also charms, dried flowers, strange powders, maybe even a toad or two. Because when science doesn't have the answers, superstition is more than welcome to step in and start swinging. The doctor pauses beneath an overhanging sign, a crudely painted serpent wound around a stick, the symbol of medicine. You wonder if he finds it ironic. There's a woman crying somewhere inside. The doctor doesn't flinch. He pulls something from a pocket, a small bundle wrapped in cloth, and steps through the door. You don't follow him in, not yet. For now, you stand quietly in the dark, watching history unfold one small, strange gesture at a time. And even though you're surrounded by the echoes of grief and hopelessness, there's something weirdly calming about this moment. Because this figure, this haunting, creaky, herb-scented human, wasn't just a shadow of fear. He was trying, against all odds, against all reason, he was trying to help. And now it's time to look closer. The door creaks shut behind him, leaving you in the fading light of the street. You wait. Not because you're scared, well, okay, maybe a little, but because you're listening. Inside, there's quiet shuffling, a cough, the rustle of cloth. Then something glass clinks softly, like a bottle being uncorked. It's time. You step up to the threshold, careful not to touch anything. The air in here is even thicker, heavy with sickness, smoke, and something earthy. And there he is, our plague doctor, crouched beside a straw mattress. His mask tilts downward. His gloved hands move with a strange grace. You can't see what's under the cloth bundle he brought in, but you can guess it's one of his tools. Let's talk about that mask. It's the most iconic part of the whole ensemble and the weirdest. Long and curved like a bird's beak, except it's stuffed with herbs and spices. Why? Because people thought disease came through bad smells. So the idea was simple: overwhelm the bad air with better air. Inside that beak, a mix of rose petals, mint leaves, camphor cloves, and sometimes, if the doctor was feeling fancy, myrrh or cinnamon. Basically, a medieval spice rack, and maybe just maybe a slice of dried orange, because citrus is always stylish. You shift your weight on the creaky floorboards and glance down. There, poking from the doctor's coat pocket, is a tightly rolled scrap of paper. You recognize it, a talisman. These were everywhere. People wrote prayers, Latin phrases, or symbols they barely understood, then folded them and kept them close. The idea was that the words, or even just the ink, had power. And who knows? Maybe they did. Historians still argue whether people genuinely believed in these charms, or if they just figured, hey, can't hurt, you inch a little closer. The doctor doesn't seem to notice, or maybe he's just letting you watch. His coat sways slightly as he moves, revealing a second pocket, wider stitched with care. Something hard glints inside. A lancet, Small, sharp, and bone-handled, that was his go-to tool for bloodletting, the medieval answer to literally everything. Headache. Let's drain some blood. Fever blood. Slight cough. Yep, more blood. Stubbed your toe. Well, you know what's coming. Doctors back then believed in balancing the humors, blood phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Too much of anyone meant trouble, so naturally, they fixed it by slicing people open. Science. Of course, not all lancets were equal. Some were beautifully crafted silver inlays, etchings, even initials carved into the handles. Others looked like they were sharpened with a rock and regret. You get the sense this one falls somewhere in between. He tucks it away and stands slowly. The patient on the bed groans. You don't know whether it's from relief or resignation. As he turns, something else slips slightly from another pocket, what looks like a small sachet tied with twine. It dangles just long enough for you to catch a whiff. Is that onions? Yes. Yes, it is. Plague doctors were obsessed with onions. Raw onions were thought to draw out bad vapors from the body. People even placed them at windows around necks, or in their pockets. One charming theory claimed that onions absorbed the plague from the air. Spoiler, they did not. Still, in a world without antibiotics, you'd try anything too, even if it meant walking around smelling like a stew gone rogue. Your eyes wander again. The coat is long and thick, with deep interior folds. You suspect he could hide a small bakery in there, and no one would notice. He pauses near a table and uncaps a small bottle. You expect something foul, but instead the scent is surprisingly pleasant. Sweet, sharp. Vinegar, that's Four Thieves vinegar, you realize. A famous concoction made from garlic, lavender, sage, rosemary, and depending on who you ask, some rather suspicious additions. Legend says it was invented by actual thieves during a plague outbreak who used it to avoid infection while robbing corpses. Charming right historians still argue whether the vinegar worked or if the thieves just got lucky. Either way, the recipe became a staple in plague doctor kits. Some sipped it, others soaked cloth in it and stuffed it inside their masks. You notice that he's doing just that, pressing a vinegar-soaked scrap into the interior of his beak. The smell intensifies. It's strong, but not unpleasant, like the world's most desperate salad dressing. He moves with purpose, now checking the patient's pulse, if you can call it that, and scribbling a note with a stubby quill. Another pocket, another mystery. You glance toward the doorway. The light outside is fading fast, but you're not leaving yet. Not until you see what else he's carrying, because somewhere in those layers of wool, waxed linen, and leather are answers, not good ones necessarily, but honest ones. Tiny windows into a world that was crumbling, panicked, and so deeply human it hurts. He finishes his examination and steps back. A coin slips from his sleeve and rolls across the floor, settling near your shoe. You pick it up instinctively. It's worn thin, old, even by plague standards. You wonder, was it meant for payment, a bribe, a ferry ride across some dark, metaphorical river? The doctor nods once at the patient, whether in goodbye or apology, you're not sure, and turns to go. You follow him out, pocketing the coin without really thinking. It's still warm. As the door closes behind you, you exhale. The night air, though damp and gritty, feels like freedom. But there's more to see. The doctor adjusts his gloves, thick wax-coated things designed to protect against touch, one of the most feared forms of contamination. You wonder how often he replaces them, or whether, like so many others, he just scrubs them with wine and hopes for the best. Tonight you'll find out. One pocket at a time, you follow the plague doctor down a narrow street where the buildings lean so far in that the rooftops nearly touch. It's darker here, cooler too. A sudden breeze ruffles the edge of your coat, carrying with it a whiff of soot and something sweet like overripe fruit and wilted flowers. It's oddly peaceful. You hear your own footsteps now, keeping time behind the slow, steady march of the doctor. He stops under a flickering lantern nailed crookedly to a stone wall. From within the folds of his cloak, he pulls a small cloth bundle. He doesn't look at it, just fingers the edge thoughtfully, like he's done this 100 times. Then he slides it back into a side pocket. Your curiosity perks up. What was that? You edge closer and glimpse the corner of a folded parchment, yellowed and brittle, tucked beside the cloth. He doesn't carry just instruments or medicine. Oh no, he carries words. Many plague doctors, especially those who leaned more spiritual than scientific, kept written prayers or spells on their person. They weren't exactly medical degrees, but they were considered just as important. People believed these little scrolls covered in sacred text or obscure symbols could ward off illness like garlic against vampires. Historians still argue whether the writing was mostly religious, alchemical, or just desperate doodling, but the intent was always the same: protect, repel, survive. Sometimes the prayers weren't even in Latin. They were phonetic imitations, half-remembered fragments, sometimes complete gibberish that sounded holy. When you don't understand what's killing people, nonsense starts to look pretty sacred. You glance again at the doctor's hands. They're gloved, thick, waxed yellow-brown, with stitching so heavy it looks like rope. They're not surgical gloves, they're armor. He reaches into his coat once more and pulls out a fresh pair, slightly stiffer, shinier, still reeking faintly of boiled linseed oil and regret. The gloves he just removed. He drops them into a sack at his belt, a used pile maybe, or possibly a morbid souvenir bag. You're not sure which makes you more uncomfortable. And here's a fun fact to lull you deeper into this historical lullaby. Most plague doctors didn't just wear gloves, they layered them. Sometimes cloth beneath leather, sometimes waxed linen beneath cured pigskin. Not because it worked especially well, but because fear has a funny way of making you believe in layers. We're looking at you, modern-day airport traveler. As he walks, the faintest clink comes from somewhere near his hip. Coins, not this time. He reaches down and pulls from a buttoned pouch something unexpected, sleek, metallic, and vaguely surgical. A spoon. You blink. Yup, definitely a spoon. Turns out spoons were more than just medieval yogurt scoops. In some cases, they were used to press down the tongue and look for buboes or swelling in the throat. In others, They were used to administer foul-tasting concoctions, or worse, scrape ulcers, and sometimes, just sometimes, they were a comfort item, a tiny bit of normalcy in a world that was anything but. You wonder if this one was ever used. You kind of hope not. He wipes the spoon on his coat, not sanitized, just wiped, and with that, it vanishes back into his pocket. As you keep walking, your eyes adjust more and more to the low light, and the doctor's shape grows familiar, almost friendly. The mask, once eerie, now looks tired, like a weary face behind a long nose. And speaking of noses, that scent again. Rosemary, maybe lavender. You can't tell. It's subtle and not at altogether unpleasant. You glance around and see nothing obvious until the doctor stops and lifts the flap of an inner pocket. Out comes a tiny cloth sachet stitched shut about the size of a plum. Inside, a mix of dried herbs, little mobile air purifiers. Herbs were everywhere during the plague years. People stuffed them in their clothes, burned them in homes, even wore them in their hair, anything to cleanse the air. And doctors. They were walking apothecaries. The sachet he holds is embroidered with a faded symbol, possibly a cross, possibly a stylized onion. Historians still argue. He presses it gently into the lining of his beak, and for a moment the posture shifts, like this is more than routine, like it's ritual. You pause, because for all the chaos outside, this man is curiously calm, focused. It's not glamorous what he does. It's not even effective, but it's intentional, back in motion. He walks toward another corner. You follow. Noting the way his coat bulges at strange angles, pockets stacked over pockets, some sewn shut, some gaping open, all probably filled with some combination of despair and cloves. He stops beside a shuttered window and turns slowly. From another pocket, he pulls a flat object wrapped in oilskin. You weren't ready for this. It's a tiny book. The leather is cracked and worn, the spine nearly broken. He opens it gently and flips through the pages, each stained with time and something that might be ink or might not be. The writing is careful though messy. Some notes are recipes. Others look like patient logs filled with vague symptoms and gloom-laden dates. Here and there, drawings crudely rendered outlines of swellings, wounds, or possibly vegetables. Hard to say. Historians love these notebooks. Some were kept religiously. Others were pure chaos, part medical text, part a shopping list. But each one is a peek into the doctor's mind. His doubts, his theories, his mistakes, his fear. The book disappears again, vanishing into a chest pocket you swear wasn't there a moment ago. And just like that, he turns again. There's still so much to uncover. The corners of his coat sway as he walks, and for a brief second, you glimpse something tied around his waist. A belt, yes, but from it dangle pouches, cases, maybe even tools, too ominous to name just yet. You'll get there. For now, the pockets are calling, and you're not done listening. You keep pace now, just a step or two behind the doctor. He doesn't acknowledge you, doesn't hurry, just walks his presence, oddly soothing in a world of panicked whispers and shuttered windows. If he notices the rats scurrying between cobblestones, he doesn't show it. You do. And unfortunately, you notice something else too, something squirming. It happens quickly. The doctor turns slightly, and the hem of his coat lifts just enough for you to see a small canvas pouch tied shut with string. It twitches. Oh no. You lean closer. Yes. It's moving. He doesn't react. Just pauses at a quiet alley wall and unties the pouch with the casual air of someone opening a snack. What drops into his palm is unmistakable. A dead mouse. Yep. You're definitely not sleeping well tonight. But before you let your imagination spiral, here's a surprisingly boring and therefore perfect historical explanation. Plague doctors sometimes carried small, dead animals, like mice or birds, in the belief that disease could be absorbed into the lifeless body, sparing the living one. Magical thinking meets field medicine. Some even believed the mouse itself, when dried and powdered, could be made into a remedy if mixed with other delightful ingredients. Like crushed emeralds or wine that had been boiled 3 times while reciting psalms. No, really. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic protection early science, or just something someone tried once and everyone awkwardly copied. The doctor gently places the mouse back into its pouch. He adjusts the knot with quiet precision, like he's done it 100 times. You resist the urge to sanitize your soul. Another pocket bulges slightly as he moves, and from it, he withdraws what looks like a necklace. At first, it's hard to tell. It's wrapped in a scrap of cloth and tied at the ends. But as he unravels it, the scent hits you garlic. A full clove necklace. The bulbs are dry but intact, strung together with what might have once been violin string. It's less of a fashion choice and more of a declaration. I am not here for a kiss. Garlic was a go-to protection charm for centuries. It was thought to purify air-fight infection and offend demons' bonus points if it kept your in-laws away too. And while garlic's actual antimicrobial properties are modest at best, its confidence level unmatched. The doctor raises the necklace to his nose, inhales deeply, and lets it hang back down inside his coat, like tucking away a secret. You don't ask questions. You don't want to. Instead, you listen. There's a faint clink as he walks. Not metallic exactly, more like glass on glass. Sure enough, his next movement reveals a tiny vial nestled inside a stitched loop on his inner belt. The glass is cloudy, and the liquid inside glows faintly amber in the fading light. He lifts it to his face, well to his mask, and tilts it, watching the contents swirl. Another remedy. Maybe rosewater, maybe distilled vinegar, maybe a combination of herbs and spirits and hope. The label is long gone, if it ever existed. Plague doctor vials were often filled with whatever they could scrape together. Alcohol, sure. Turpentine. If it burned, it cured, or at least it felt like something was happening. Sometimes the concoctions were meant to be sniffed, sometimes swallowed, and sometimes they were just for show. One fringe theory, rarely taken seriously, suggests that a few plague doctors created their own perfumes, spiritual defenses, disguised as fragrance. So maybe what he's holding isn't just a vial. Maybe it's his armor. He slips it away again carefully, like it's something precious. As he continues on, you notice a change in his posture. His steps slow, his shoulders shift, and then he reaches into a chest-level pocket and draws out something flat and gleaming, a crucifix, not large, not fancy, just silver and worn at the edges hanging from a fraying thread. He turns it over once in his glove, pressing it between thumb and forefinger like a reflex, not even prayer, just habit, muscle memory from fear. Beside it, he wears a small amulet, a rough medallion of a saint long lost to most memory. Maybe Saint Sebastian, the go-to patron for plague sufferers. Maybe someone more obscure. Historians still argue whether these trinkets were carried for belief duty or because it was too painful not to carry something. The doctor pauses at a closed door and tucks the cross back into its hiding place. No one answers his knock, so he simply places a mark on the wood with a small stub of charcoal from yet another pocket. It's a silent language. You don't ask what it means. Instead, you marvel at the sheer number of things he's carrying. He's a walking curiosity cabinet, a sad, clanking, herb-scented museum of fear and resilience, and even stranger, you're beginning to feel safe around him, not because he has answers, but because he has intent. He's not here to cure the world. He's here to stand in it. As he moves again, the lantern light behind you catches the edge of another paper tucked into his cuff. You catch just one word, Mars. That might be a story for another night. For now, you follow him onward. The darkness folds in, and the alley opens up. There's still more to see, more to carry, and more strange truths hidden in the seams of this old heavy coat. And you're getting better at reading the silence. You've stopped trying to make sense of time. The streets blur together narrow alleys and crooked gutters, shuttered windows, the occasional stray cat eyeing you like it knows you're not from around here. The plague doctor hasn't spoken a word, but his movements narrate everything. You turn the corner just behind him and find yourself in what might generously be called a square. More of a widening in the road, really. A few limp torches flicker, doing their best not to extinguish themselves out of sheer depression. Here he pauses, and from yet another inner pocket, one you swear was stitched into existence, just now he pulls out something folded precise and worn a star chart. Okay, now we're getting weird. The parchment crinkles faintly as he unrolls it, its hand drawn, lines and constellations, ink blots that look like someone coughed too hard while writing. A faint circle marks the moon's phase. He holds it up to the lantern's dim glow, then folds it again without hesitation and tucks it neatly back into the same uncanny pocket. You blink. Because yes, even plague doctor's leather-clad, herb-smelling rodent pouch carrying plague doctors consulted the stars. It sounds ridiculous now, but back then, astrology was serious medicine. Doctors considered the positions of the planets when diagnosing illnesses. Saturn aligned with Mars. Well, congratulations, your bile's out of whack, and your chances of survival just dropped another 20%. Historians still argue whether astrology was used sincerely or simply to give terrified patients anything to hold on to. But make no mistake, the stars mattered, and apparently they still do to this guy. As he folds the chart away, Your eyes drop to another darker bulge in his coat. He notices you noticing. Doesn't stop you, though. He reaches down and very carefully withdraws a small linen pouch. It sags heavily in his hand. He opens it. And yes, that's a dried toad. You take a tiny, involuntary step backward, but he's not alarmed, not amused, just matter of fact. The toad, stiff and curled like a fossilized raisin, lies on his gloved palm. It's been wrapped in some kind of powdery cloth, now stained a murky yellow. There's something ritualistic about how he holds it, like it's not just a dead thing, but a tool. And strangely, it was. At the time, dried toads were thought to absorb disease, pull poison, or ward off spiritual rot. Some were even sliced open and worn in pouches. One method involved binding a live toad to the patient's body until it died, at which point the plague was theoretically transferred. I know, comforting bedtime material, isn't it? And while modern science kindly calls this wildly inaccurate, the belief behind it, desperation wrapped in ritual, feels oddly human. He closes the pouch slowly. His gloves leave faint prints on the fabric. The toad disappears again. Just as you're starting to feel slightly better about that being over, you hear a faint jingle. Your ears twitch. It's not coins this time. It's bells. Small ones. You scan his silhouette. Sure enough, hanging from a braided cord on the side of his belt are several tiny brass bells. Dull, old, but definitely there. Why bells? Great question. Some doctors believe the jingling noise would scare off evil spirits or warn the infected that questionable help, but help nonetheless was approaching. Others claimed it kept the air moving around them. Yes, really. Mostly, though, it served as a warning, because if you heard those bells, someone was dying nearby. There's a strange dignity to the sound, a little sad, a little sacred. Like the doctor himself is the town's mourning bell tower, wandering from one grief to another, quietly keeping time. He takes a few more steps and reaches the edge of a wooden bench. From the inner flap of his coat, he withdraws something new. A wooden tag, flat and rectangular, with hastily carved letters across one side. You squint. The letters are rough, uneven, like someone carved them in a hurry. Maybe drunk, maybe dying. It's supposed to be a medical credential, but the words are off. Misspelled, some are crossed out, others scratched into the wood so deeply they've splintered. This was, believe it or not, a common occurrence. During peak plague years, cities were desperate for anyone who even pretended to be a doctor. Licenses were forged, names invented. Some men were hired purely because they weren't already dead. It was medicine by impersonation. Historians still argue whether the original plague doctors were actual professionals or just well-dressed opportunists with a flair for accessories. The doctor slips the tag away again, almost embarrassed. He shifts once more and reaches into a small outer pouch. This time, he removes something that rattles faintly. He opens it into his palm. Pills, tiny ones, pale, chalky, vaguely spherical. They look like breath mints. You almost expect him to pop one into his mask. These were called plague pills, though they cured absolutely nothing. Made from a mix of flour, ground herbs, sometimes opium, sometimes chalk, They were either swallowed or dissolved in liquid. Some were purely sugar. Others included ingredients so horrifying they'd make a rat gag. But patients took them. Doctors prescribed them because, again, something was better than nothing. He rolls a pill between his gloved fingers, then drops it back into the pouch. The air shifts. A crow calls from a nearby rooftop. The city exhales in slow motion, and the doctor moves on. You walk behind him now with more awareness of the things you've seen, the things you smelled, and the things still hidden beneath those dozens of seams and folds. Each pocket a time capsule, each step a ritual. He isn't just a man anymore. He's a library, a lantern in the dark, a soft jingle warning the world that hope, however foolish, is still walking. And you're not afraid anymore, just curious. The wind shifts again, carrying a sharp scent through the alley, burned wood, old meat, and something faintly medicinal. Your boots scrape softly along the cobblestones as you follow the doctor deeper into the maze of half-forgotten streets. Somewhere a baby cries, somewhere else a door slams shut and bolts from inside. No one wants to see him coming, and yet here you are, voluntarily keeping pace with a man who looks like a bird and smells like an herb garden married a bottle of vinegar. You notice the way he walks, not slow, but deliberate. He doesn't seem to wander. He's headed somewhere. You're not sure where, but you know one thing. He's not done pulling strange things out of his coat. As if on cue, he stops beside what might have once been a fountain and draws something from a low pocket, a tin box. You hear a soft scrape as the lid pops open, and your curiosity leans in before your nose warns you not to, because inside that little tin leeches. Oh yes, still wriggling. They move sluggishly like wet spaghetti with ambition. The doctor doesn't flinch. He turns the tin in his hand, checks their sluggish dance, then closes it again with the air of someone checking if the milk's gone bad. It has. He keeps it anyway. Leeches were all the rage for centuries. They sucked out bad blood, which according to the humor theory of medicine was the root of all evil headaches, fevers, heartbreak, probably bad poetry too. Historians still debate whether the practice did more harm than good. Some argue it at least stimulated circulation. Others point out that most people didn't have enough blood to spare to begin with. Regardless, leeches became synonymous with medicine. Portable little vampires of hope. You eye the tin again. It disappears back into his coat like nothing happened. Another step forward, another faint jingle. This time, he reaches beneath his coat and pulls something much simpler, a flint and a pouch of incense shavings. You raise an eyebrow. Fire. Yes. Some plague doctors believe that burning certain substances could purify the air. Incense herbs, even dried fruit peels, anything that smoked or smoldered was a potential weapon against the miasma. He crouches beside a crumbling stone wall, strikes the flint twice, snap, spark, snap, and holds the incense shavings to the little flame that flickers to life. The smell is immediate, sharp herbal, slightly sweet. Maybe sage, maybe desperation. Smoke curls up into the dark, drifting like a ghost across the wall. In this moment, the scene is strangely peaceful. You stand beside a man wearing a bird mask, lighting incense for the dead or the dying, and somehow it doesn't feel strange anymore. It feels respectful. He doesn't linger. The smoldering pile is left behind, a tiny altar to caution and coping mechanisms. He walks on, and you, of course, follow. Not long after, he pauses again. This time, near a shuttered stall, a vendor long since closed shop, maybe forever. He slips a hand inside one of the interior breast pockets of his coat and pulls out two metal instruments, a spoon and a scalpel. Well, that escalated. The spoon you've seen before. But the scalpel, it's small, thin, and wickedly clean. The handle is bone white, literally. It's carved from something organic. You try not to guess what. Spoons and scalpels were standard tools for plague doctors. They used the spoons to examine mouths and throats, sometimes to remove mucus or other substances that probably should have stayed mysterious. The scalpel was for lancing buboes, those swollen infected lymph nodes that became the unwelcome hallmark of the bubonic plague. Lancing was risky business. Pus, blood, more pus. Sometimes the procedure helped relieve pressure. Sometimes it just opened the door for more infection. But when faced with a dying patient, you used what you had. He inspects both tools briefly, wiping them down with a rag from his belt. Then, just like that, they vanish again back into his coat. Like magic tricks, no one applauds. He adjusts his mask slightly. You catch a glimpse of the fastening mechanism, a series of tiny leather straps that wrap around the back of his head. There's a bit of fraying near the top, and something is stitched into the side. You squint. It's not embroidery. It's writing. Tiny, nearly invisible ink lines. You can only make out a few letters. In nomine, something Latin, a prayer, a dedication, a warning label. You wonder how many masks he's worn before this one, how many days he's stood exactly where you are now, surrounded by rot, trying to make sense of what can't be solved. You walk again, and as the night deepens, the streets grow quieter. The doctor reaches into another deep pocket, and this time pulls out something unexpected, an apple. Dried, shrunk with age, wrinkled like it's been through a few emotional winters. But unmistakably, an apple. You stare. Because why not? Maybe it's for eating. Maybe it's a charm. Maybe it's part of a fruit-based theory of disease you've never heard of. Historians have their guesses. Some doctors believed fruit, especially apples, could absorb bad air. Others thought they balanced humors. Still others just liked the way they smelled. And in times of uncertainty, sometimes even a fruit becomes sacred. He rolls it in his hand like a worry stone, then gently places it back into a cloth-lined pocket near his ribs. And you're beginning to understand that nothing in this man's coat is random. Each item, no matter how strange, how useless, how bizarre, carries weight. History, hope, even the weird little bells. And somewhere in those pockets, there's still more to find. So you keep walking, one creak of leather at a time. The cobblestones grow uneven under your feet. The street curves now almost imperceptibly, as if even the city itself doesn't want you to go where the doctor is headed. But you do. You always do. Something about the rhythm of his steps, the quiet weight of his presence, draws you forward like the soft pull of sleep. He stops beside a door shuttered unmarked. Not a house, not a clinic, something else. He doesn't go in. He just stands there, thinking maybe. Then, as if deciding something, he reaches into one of the deeper pockets stitched into the side of his coat and pulls out a letter. This one is different. It's sealed. You can tell immediately it hasn't been touched in a long time. The wax is cracked, the edges curled. There's handwriting in the front, faded but careful. You can't make out the name. He turns the envelope over in his gloved hand like it's heavier than it should be. For a second, he just looks at it. It doesn't belong to a patient. It isn't a prescription. It's something else entirely. A personal letter. Plague doctors, for all their grim duty, were still people, and people carry things for reasons they can't always explain. Some kept goodbye notes from families they never saw again. Some wrote instructions in case they themselves didn't survive. Others kept letters they never had the chance to deliver. Maybe this one says, "If I don't come back, tell my son I tried." Maybe it says nothing. Just a name, a memory, a folded bit of hope tucked in next to leeches and vinegar. He doesn't open it, just gently places it back into his coat and presses it flat against his chest. You feel the air shift. Not the wind, the mood. That letter lives in his pocket like a breath held too long, a silent companion. And then, shunned like that, he moves again. He turns down another alley and disappears into the mist, his outline briefly swallowed by the shadows. You follow quickly, heart ticking a little louder than before. When you catch up, he's at a shuttered window. He pulls something from the very top interior pocket of his coat, a small square of darkened bronze. At first you think it's a coin. It's not. It's a mirror, barely reflective anymore, more smudged than silver. He holds it up, looking not at himself, but at the window, the light, the world behind him. Then, in one small gesture, he tucks it back away. Why, a mirror. Doctors carried them to check for signs of infection on themselves, on patients. Some even believed it could catch evil spirits, reflecting bad air away from the body. Others used them to signal across narrow streets, or for something more poetic, to remind themselves of who they were before the mask. Historians still argue whether it was for vanity or vigilance. Either way, it's in the pocket, and that makes it matter. The doctor pauses at a water barrel and dips a cloth, yet another item, from yet another pouch into the cool water. He wrings it out, ties it across his glove, then reaches again into that endlessly mysterious coat and pulls out a bundle. You recognize it now. It's herbs, lavender, rosemary, rue, maybe even marjoram if you want to get fancy. Dried and bundled, tied with string or sinew, wrapped in waxed paper, and pressed into the creases of his coat like a mobile garden of last chances. He opens one bundle and scatters a few of the crumbling leaves across the wet cloth. Then he ties it again, quick and practiced. This is the world's saddest potpourri, and it was standard practice. Herbal mixtures were thought to neutralize bad air or mask the smell of rot. For plague doctors, they were as essential as gloves or beaks. Some kept them for the scent, some for ritual. Others just liked having something pleasant in a world that was anything but. And this doctor, he's got at least 4 more bundles tucked away. You wonder if he picks them himself. He moves again more slowly now, as if the night is thickening around his knees. You follow close as he reaches into a flat pouch across his belt and pulls out something truly horrible. A tin, old, hinged. He pops it open. Inside leeches. Again. You look at him almost betrayed. Didn't we already do this? But no, this is a different tin. A slightly bigger one. A bit more decorative. Possibly passed down. Possibly borrowed. Inside the leeches are fat, healthy, uncomfortably enthusiastic. He lifts one gently with a tool, a small spoon with a notch in the edge, like a ladle for nightmares. Then he places it back. No action taken, just checking inventory, you suppose. There's something about the way he closes the tin softly, reverently, like he's not storing a parasite, but preserving a legacy. Because in this world, even the bloodsuckers served a purpose, and now the coat sways again as he adjusts it across his shoulders. You swear you hear something soft inside, not metal, not wood, paper. He pulls out another folded square, this one smaller, yellowed with age. You recognize the edges immediately. This is no talisman or spell. It's a tiny sketchbook. Inside are crude drawings, patient symptoms, maybe faces long since gone. One page shows a child, another a dog. One features what looks like a very confused goat. Historians still argue whether these drawings were documentation distraction or diary. You think maybe it was all 3. He lingers on one page, an eye wide and clear, then shuts the book. You look at him now and realize he's not just carrying a bunch of medical trinkets. He's carrying the entire weight of the job, the people he's seen, the losses, the routine, the hope absurd and heavy as dried toads and garlic necklaces. Every pocket, every pouch, every fold of that strange black coat, it holds more than objects. It holds a kind of memory, the kind that doesn't speak but doesn't leave. And you keep walking beside him. You don't even flinch when the bells jingle now. By now you know the sound of his coat, the soft swish of thick fabric, the occasional jingle of tiny bells, and that faint clack metal tools settling into place, or perhaps something heavier. You've become fluent in plague doctor body language, which is either a superpower or a symptom of sleep deprivation. The air has shifted again, not in temperature but in tone. The street you're on now is quieter, abandoned. You hear a single shutter creak lazily in the wind and the distant splash of something water, probably, but honestly, at this point you're not taking bets. The doctor stops beneath an archway that looks like it was made by someone who gave up halfway through construction. A crooked keystone leans above your head like it's thinking about falling. He reaches beneath the front panel of his coat, pulls out a little drawstring bag, and unties it. What spills out into his gloved palm coins. A few copper, 1 silver, all worn smooth at the edges, stamped with vaguely familiar symbols. Not a payment, not a bribe, not even a donation jar. These are travel coins. Plague doctors often carried a few coins for various reasons, some practical, some unsettling. They might be used to pay tolls, gain entry into quarantined homes, or barter for supplies when no one wanted to touch you. But there's another theory, one with colder roots. Coins were also meant for the afterlife, a tradition reaching back to the ancient world, payment for Charon, the mythical ferryman who guided souls across the river Styx. Leave a coin on the eyes or in the mouth or in the hand of the deceased. Make sure they're not wandering in the dark without passage. Historians still argue whether plague doctors believed this or whether they simply carried coins because the dead weren't the only ones who needed safe passage. Sometimes a bribe could open a gate that prayer couldn't. He tucks the coins away with care. One finger lingers on the bag's opening a moment longer than necessary. A whisper of superstition. A pause for luck. He moves on. You follow. Keeping your distance now, not from fear, but from respect. The man's carrying an entire era in his pockets, and you're just trying not to breathe too loudly around it. Another street, another shadowed corner. This time, when he reaches into his coat, he pulls out something both completely mundane and quietly fascinating, a quill and ink. You watch as he uncaps a small glass inkwell from his belt. It's corked tightly stained around the rim and somehow still half full. The quill is simple bird feather, trimmed, neatly stained, dark at the point from years of record keeping. Because in between dodging death and stuffing herbs into every available crevice, plague doctors had paperwork. Lots of it. They logged symptoms, tracked recoveries, described courses in detail that would make most people lose their lunch. Sometimes they even drew pictures, rough sketches, of swellings, wounds, or layouts of infected homes. You peek over his shoulder. He's writing something now. His handwriting is sharp, practiced, slanted forward, like it's trying to outrun whatever it just recorded. You can't read the language, but the shape of it is familiar, clinical, detached. But the hand holding the quill trembles slightly. You wonder how many names he's written down today, or how many he's chosen not to. He blots the paper, folds it once, and slides it into a small ledger. The quill goes back into his coat. The ink. He flicks the cork back on, wipes the lip with a cloth, puts that away too. There's a rhythm to his movements. Not rushed, not careless, like someone who's done the same task so many times it's become part of his muscle memory, like breathing or grieving. He turns and walks again. And that's when you see it. Poking slightly from one of the outermost pockets is something peculiar, even by plague doctor standards. It's fur. You look closer. It's a tail. No, not a living one, thankfully, but unmistakably a rat tail, dried and curled like a strand of very cursed ribbon. Attached to it is a tiny skull, a rat's, cleaned, polished, carved with strange little runes along the top of the cranium. You blink once, twice. The doctor doesn't notice, or maybe he does and just doesn't care. Why would someone carry a rat skull? Well, some believed rats caused the plague. Others believed they were messengers or omens. A few early doctors, possibly frustrated at their own powerlessness, turned to symbolism, wearing pieces of the disease's so-called bringers as talismans of control. There's no consensus, just the skull. And now it's back in the pocket fur, vanishing beneath the folds of fabric like it was never there. You walk a little more cautiously now, Not because you're scared, but because you're starting to understand the weight of this coat. Every item he carries is a story, a theory, a myth, a ritual born from chaos. Somewhere behind you, a dog barks once, then stops. Somewhere ahead, the doctor's silhouette wavers under a torchlight. He moves as if the night doesn't touch him anymore, as if he's become part of it. The mask no longer looks eerie, it looks tired. He reaches again into a side pouch, and this time pulls something small and folded like a handkerchief, but thicker. When he opens it, you see letters. Not full letters, but fragments. A torn page here, a single phrase there. Names, possibly his own handwriting, possibly someone else's. You lean a little closer. They're love notes, some incomplete, some scribbled hastily. One simply says, "Wait for me." You feel a sudden ache at the back of your throat. He folds them again, gently, and places them into a flat inner pocket close to his heart. Not all tools are for healing. Some are for remembering. Some pockets aren't about medicine at all. They're about humanity. And in that moment, watching him disappear again into the winding dark, you understand something simple and quiet. This man isn't trying to fix everything. He's just trying not to forget what matters. You don't know how long you've been walking now. Minutes, hours. The air feels thicker with every step. It wraps around your shoulders like a damp blanket, not quite cold, but just uncomfortable enough to remind you that this is no dream. It's a lullaby with splinters. Ahead, the doctor pauses at a corner and adjusts something around his neck. You lean to one side, curious. It's not a scarf. It's another string of dried garlic cloves looped beside a faded cloth charm, and surprise, another tiny bell. This man is a walking spice rack with alarm settings. He reaches up to tighten the loop. You catch a glimpse of his glove, brushing the edge of something new. A pouch. Small, flat, blackened by use. He opens it and slides out a round, flat disc, metal. Bronze, maybe. Etched with markings you can't quite decipher. He holds it up to the light of the nearest torch, tilts it, turns it, then slides it back into place. It's a medallion. Plague doctors often wore religious symbols, but this is different. It's not a crucifix, not a saint's portrait. It's possibly astrological or even alchemical. One part charm, one part code, one part, "I hope this works." Historians still argue what these medallions meant. Some say they were used for diagnosis, others as protective talismans, and still others as identification among fellow doctors or alchemists. Whatever the case, it stays close to his chest. And while you're busy wondering about symbols and secrets, he's already moved on. His coat brushes the edge of a crate, and you hear a sharp click from inside one of the deeper pockets. You know that sound. It's wood. Sure enough, he pulls out a small hinged case. He opens it slowly. Inside, spoons, plural. One tarnished, one polished, one carved with something resembling teeth. You're not ready for this collection. Turns out, plague doctors didn't just carry one spoon. They carried a set. Different shapes, different sizes, each designed for a different miserable purpose. Some were for the mouth, pressing down the tongue, scraping ulcers, applying herbal paste to swollen gums. Others were for wounds used to scoop prod or clean out infected boils. Some were purely symbolic silver never used, carried for luck or religious significance. You're staring at the one with the notches now. It's short, squared off, darkened by time. He traces a gloved finger along the edge before placing it carefully back in its slot. He closes the case and tucks it away. And just as you think he's done, he reaches into another pocket near the waist, this one sealed, with a twist of cloth, and draws out something that clinks softly. A tiny glass bottle. It's the color of honey, with thick, cloudy liquid inside. The cork has been replaced at least twice, wrapped in twine to keep it secure. You catch a whiff as he loosens the seal. It smells like crushed rosemary and vinegar, and maybe something floral hiding in the background, like lavender in a panic attack. This is Four Thieves vinegar again, but maybe his own version. Maybe each plague doctor brewed a signature blend. Historians suspect many did. Recipes passed from one desperate hand to another: garlic cloves, wormwood sage thyme, a little vinegar, a lot of hope. The story behind it is legendary. Four thieves robbing plague victims, protected only by this potion. Caught, tried, spared the gallows in exchange for the recipe. A tale too tidy to be true, maybe. But tidy doesn't matter when fear is messy. And this bottle, it smells like someone wanted very badly to believe. The doctor reseals it and holds it still in his palm for a moment longer than necessary. You notice the glint of something pressed into the base of the bottle, tiny markings. A number, a name, maybe initials. He puts it away gently. You take a step closer, and that's when you hear the faintest creak. Leather bending, a strap loosening. He's opening the innermost flap of his coat now, the one closest to the mask. And from it, he draws something small, light, and a little ridiculous. A dried apple slice. Not a whole one, just a thin ring shriveled at the edges, the core still visible like a fossilized flower. It hangs from a bit of string. You feel your brows go up. Even after dead mice leeches, rat skulls, and pocket spells, this still surprises you. He holds it up, turning it slightly in the air. It's not food, it's a charm. Apples were a symbol of health even in times when no one was healthy. Some doctors carried drugged slices as protective totems. Others believed fruit could absorb sickness. A few went further and used dried apples in rituals, cutting them at midnight, placing them in patient beds, or soaking them in vinegar for days. Historians disagree on whether it was a nod to folk magic or just wishful thinking carved into fruit. He places the slice back inside the flap, taps the coat gently over it, like saying goodnight. Then he walks again. You trail him in silence. The street narrows into a crooked path between buildings that look like they might fall over if someone sneezes too hard. The world is shrinking, and yet the doctor seems just as steady. His coat sways. You hear the soft bump of something new. Another pocket opens. This time, a length of red string. He runs it between his fingers. Sometimes a thread was tied to the wrist of a plague victim and worn by the doctor to link them symbolically, to carry a burden, a prayer, or simply to remember. It's just a string, but in his hands, it feels sacred. And when he tucks it away, you're not surprised, because now you understand. The pockets of a plague doctor are not practical, they are ritual, part medicine, part mythology. And every item, every garlic bulb, every leech, every bit of vinegar whispers the same message: I am afraid, but I am still here. The alley ahead curves sharply, narrowing between two half-collapsed buildings. You follow quietly your footsteps, now instinctively softer, as if your body's finally accepted. This isn't a dream. It's a slow walk through the edge of forgotten time. And at the center of it all, a man wrapped in black wool and silence, carrying the weight of the plague in his pockets. You duck beneath a wooden beam as the path turns again, and the doctor halts in front of a low stone wall, more rubble than structure. He doesn't speak, doesn't gesture, just kneels. There among the weeds and cracked stone is a small makeshift shrine, a handful of burnt candles now cold, a half-empty bottle of wine tipped on its side, a scrap of fabric maybe from a child's gown. The doctor reaches into his coat. You brace yourself. But this time, what he pulls out is a sprig of rosemary, fresh, surprisingly green. He sets it down gently among the relics, adjusts it once, then steps back. No words, no ritual flourish, just the sound of wind passing through hollow places. Rosemary for remembrance. The phrase drifts through your mind from some forgotten literature class, and suddenly it fits too well. You've seen bundles of herbs before, tied, burned, crushed, but this is different. This one isn't for purification, it's for memory, because not everything the plague doctor carries is meant to protect himself. Some things are for the dead, and maybe some are for those left behind. He stands again and adjusts his coat. You notice how carefully he handles it, each layer, each flap, each tie. He doesn't fumble, doesn't rush. It's like every stitch has been memorized, and as he does, something else catches your eye. Tucked into a high, nearly hidden pocket, just beneath his right shoulder is a thin roll of parchment. Smaller than a map, thicker than a note. He retrieves it slowly. You don't breathe. He unrolls it carefully, and there in fading ink and fraying edges is a hand-drawn chart, part anatomical diagram, part star map, part prayer. You don't know what it is, but he does. The figure at the center is human, barely. Surrounding it are lines that spiral out like constellations linked to strange glyphs and obscure words. This, you realize, is a hybrid, a piece of science, a piece of faith, a piece of ritual. Some plague doctors made their own guides when official ones failed them, field diagrams, personal theories, emotional maps. There were no textbooks for surviving a dying world, so they made their own. He studies it silently, just for a moment, then rolls it back up, fastens the string, and tucks it away again. Another weight gently placed back where it belongs. You walk again. The street opens up briefly. A square maybe, a courtyard, possibly. The doctor moves to the edge of a well. No water inside, just a dry echo. From his coat, he removes a vial, glass, round, opaque. The liquid inside glows faintly green under the moonlight. It looks like absinthe with a grudge. He uncorks it with a gloved hand. A wisp of scent drifts up, sharp herbal, slightly metallic. This is not perfume. This is a ward. Plague doctors often created counter smells strong enough to overwhelm the stench of decay, or at least mask it. Some believed these strong scents acted like a wall, that if you couldn't smell the plague, it couldn't reach you. Historians debate the effectiveness, but there's no denying the human urge to believe that smell could be both shield and sword. He holds the vial near the well for a moment, then sprinkles a few drops in. They hiss faintly as they hit the dry stone. Not scientific, not even sensible, but absolutely real. You stand beside him as he corks the bottle again. You want to ask what it's like carrying all this. You want to ask if he remembers their names, but you don't, because some questions, like some tools, are too delicate to pull from the pocket without tearing something essential. The doctor reaches into the small pouch on his left wrist, now a place you hadn't even noticed. From it, he pulls a small object that gleams under the moonlight. A sewing needle. You blink. It's threaded with black thread wrapped around a curved bit of leather. He tests the tip on the edge of his glove, not enough to puncture, just to check. You realize then even this had its place. In an era with no antibiotics, no anesthesia, no hope of a sterile field, even plague doctors sometimes had to stitch, to patch skin, or clothing, or masks, or people. He tucks the needle away again near his wrist. It vanishes in one smooth motion, as though it's gone back into a holster, and then without warning, he stops. Right there, in the center of the empty square. You stop too, his hands lift slowly toward his mask. Wait, he's not removing it. He's adjusting something. His fingers find the ridge of the beak, press a hidden seam, and from inside the beak, he removes something. Carefully, as if it's alive. You recognize it immediately. It's a pouch of herbs, tiny, well-worn, no longer fragrant. The mask itself, the iconic bird face, wasn't just for show. It was a filter, a compartment, a trap. And inside, doctors placed herbs, cloth-scented oils, anything that might block the smell, and with it, the supposed danger. And now, standing in the dark, he unfolds the little sachet with almost parental gentleness. The contents are dull now, dried up, colorless, but he tips them into the well anyway, a quiet offering, then replaces the pouch with a fresh one. New herbs, new scent, same ritual. The beak clicks closed, the mask returns to its silent stare, and the coat sways slightly in the wind. You look at him now not as a costume, or a figure of the past, or even a curiosity. You see him as what he is. Someone who walks with grief in his pockets, but still keeps walking. Someone who stares into hopelessness and says, "I'll carry this if no one else will." And for the first time all night, you wonder what you might carry too. The candle's tiny flame flickers behind you as you follow the doctor onward, its light slowly swallowed by the dark, like a whisper too quiet to hold. You don't turn to watch it go out. He doesn't either. Instead, he moves on as if it were never meant to last. Just a moment, a mark, a breath of something warm before vanishing into the fog. Ahead, the road forks. The right path leads toward the waterfront. You can smell the brine on the air layered with smoke and wet rope. The left toward the outskirts where the houses grow fewer and the silence thickens. He goes left. You follow without thinking now. The buildings grow farther apart. The wind picks up again low and steady, and you hear the softest rustle from his coat as something inside shifts. A pocket near the back hem, almost hidden beneath the folds of his overcoat, bulges slightly. He reaches for it slow and deliberate and pulls out a small wooden box. It fits in the palm of his hand, fastened with a simple brass hinge. He opens it. Inside, a set of prayer beads. Worn, dark. The cord stretched and frayed between some of the beads. You can almost hear them click as he turns them through his gloved fingers. This isn't just a rosary. Not anymore. For many plague doctors, such items blended belief and ritual into something personal, not always religious in the official sense. Sometimes the beads were recited, sometimes just held, and sometimes they were there only to occupy the hands when the mind could take no more. He closes the box gently, like he's shutting a door in a quiet house, slides it back into the pocket, doesn't hurry, doesn't look up, and you keep walking. You're outside the dense part of the city now. The road here turns into dirt again, uneven, and edged with low stone walls and brush. The smell of civilization is fainter, and so is the light. One torch flickers on a crooked post. That's it. As you walk, his pace slows. He stops near an overgrown marker at the edge of a small, nameless graveyard. Just a handful of stones. No names, no flowers. He kneels beside one and opens a pouch from the side of his belt. This one is round, soft, and stained at the bottom. From it, he removes a folded square of paper, yellowed by time and damp. It opens stiffly. Inside, in smudged, delicate handwriting, a list of names. You can't read all of them, but you see the pattern columns, dates, maybe ages. Next to some crosses. Next to others, nothing at all. Not yet. He stares at the page. Then, with a kind of practiced gentleness, he presses his gloved hand against the ground beside the stone and says nothing, not a prayer, not a word, just the weight of presence. This you think is the burden he carries that no one sees. Not just herbs and coins and chalk, but this, the keeping of names, the act of not forgetting. He folds the page again and presses it back into the pouch. But he doesn't rise right away. He reaches once more into that same belt pocket and withdraws a small strip of cloth, tattered, stained, a torn piece of a patient's clothing maybe, or a scarf, or a banner from a house that doesn't stand anymore. You'll never know. He presses it to the edge of the gravestone, lets it rest there, then lets it go. It flutters in the wind for a moment, then settles. You don't ask what it means, but you feel it. When he stands again, the silence grows deeper. The road narrows into a worn path along a ridge. The brush parts ahead, and then a low hill dotted with small structures, tents mostly, makeshift shelters, quarantine huts. He walks toward them like he's been here before, and chances are he has. From an inside breast pocket, somewhere near his heart, he pulls a small square of paper, folded in quarters, crisp. You see what looks like a map, a hand-drawn layout of this area. It's not detailed, just a few symbols, circles, boxes, a line where the stream runs behind the trees. He marks a tiny X with a charcoal nub, then folds it again. He's mapping the forgotten places. Even plague doctors had to track what the world tried to erase. Quarantine zones, shuttered homes, mass graves, places no one would build statues for. The pocket that holds this map doesn't just carry parchment, it carries the weight of things that shouldn't be allowed to vanish. He tucks it back inside and keeps walking toward the first tent. And here, just for a moment, you see something strange. He pauses outside and reaches into a front pocket, pulls out a thin wooden flute. He doesn't play it, he just looks at it, turns it over in his hand, then places it gently on the ground beside the tent flap and walks away. Why a flute, you'll never be sure. Some say plague doctors brought instruments to soothe the sick. Others believe they were used as comfort for children. A few claim it was simply a gift left behind for whoever might come next. Historians will never agree, but in this moment, it's not about the answers. It's about the offering and the silence it leaves behind. He walks to the edge of the ridge and looks out over the land, the city behind, the tents below, the road ahead. You're standing beside him now, not as a witness, not even as a guest, but as someone who finally understands what this journey has been. Not a list of tools, not a catalog of superstition, but a study in human weight. Each pocket, each pouch, each hidden compartment carries not just what the plague doctor needed, but what he refused to leave behind. The morning isn't here yet, but something like it lingers along the edges of the horizon. Not light exactly, just a little less dark. A softening. The doctor still hasn't spoken. He likely never will. You've accepted that now. His story isn't told through words, but through what he carries and what he quietly leaves behind. You glance down at his coat again. You've followed him long enough to know the rhythm. Now the pattern of where the weight shifts, when he turns the soft thump of glass against stitched leather, the whisper of a dried herb brushing against paper. He stops beside another tent, and from a slim side pocket near his ribs, one you've somehow missed, until now, he pulls a strange object, a small folded paper fan. Your brain, sleep-soft and dream-drenched, almost laughs. A fan out here. But then he opens it, gently, slowly. The parchment cracks faintly, but it holds. You see brushstrokes, ink, some kind of floral motif, lavender maybe, or rosemary curling along the paper edges. A name is written along the base in elegant script. It's worn, nearly illegible. He raises the fan for just a moment, wafts it once toward the tent flap, then folds it, again presses it closed, and tucks it carefully back into the same pocket. A memory, a scent, a gesture. Not in everything the doctor carries is used. Some things are kept. He moves again, past the last tent, toward a hollow tree that leans like it's tired of pretending to stand straight. You've been watching his coat for hours, and yet it still surprises you. Another flap opens near the side seam. From within, he pulls a tiny, smooth stone, flat and dark. There's a cross carved into one side. The groove is shallow, but careful. Someone took time with it. He kneels beside the tree, and sets the stone beneath its roots. No words, no fanfare. And again you wonder, was this always meant to be placed here, or has he simply been waiting for the right moment to let it go? Historians speculate that some plague doctors marked trees or stones to track safe paths or leave messages for other doctors. But this isn't a message, it's a marker. He stands again, and somehow, without a sound, you feel the coat shift. Another pocket opens. Out comes a small notebook, not the one with sketches and charts. This one is different. Leather cover, hand-stitched spine, fraying corners. The pages are thick, speckled with age. He opens it near the middle, flips through slowly. You glimpse what's inside. Poetry. Yes, poetry. Some rhyming, some not, some full pages, others just a single line. She coughed once and the sky folded in. 3 knocks, 1 candle, a girl who laughed in fever. I promised her spring. I brought winter. You don't need to know who wrote them, only that they mattered. He reads a line silently, closes the book, presses it to his chest. Then, without any ceremony, he tears 1 page from the back, folds it twice, and tucks it into the hollow of the same tree, for someone else or for no one. Then the book disappears again. You walk side by side now for a few quiet moments. There's no sound but wind and the occasional creak of his coat. Then you hear something new, a soft rattle, very faint, like small stones tumbling in a pouch. He reaches into a narrow inner pocket and brings out a tiny string of bones. Bird bones, clean, bleached, threaded together carefully, tied in a loop no larger than a bracelet. He turns it in his hand for a while, letting it sway like a pendulum. The bones click gently, a rhythm like rainfall on tile. Then he hooks it over a low-hanging branch and leaves it swaying there, a soft lullaby in the wind. Why bird bones? Some say they were charms, others divination tools. But maybe they were neither. Maybe he just found something delicate and refused to throw it away. Another pocket opens. Another object appears. A piece of black ribbon coiled carefully, like it once belonged in someone's hair. He doesn't tie it anywhere, doesn't place it. He just holds it, then presses it against the back of his glove for a long breath, and finally slips it into a pouch on the opposite side of his coat. Somewhere new, a different place. He's not letting go of this one yet. The wind carries the faint scent of ash again, and maybe rosemary, maybe rosewater. He walks toward a low rise at the edge of the clearing. You follow. At the crest, he stops and pulls something small and square from beneath the lowest button of his coat. It's a scrap of mirror glass, just big enough to reflect one eye. The edge is smoothed from wear. There's a crack running through it. He doesn't use it. He just looks into it. And you realize this isn't to see himself. It's to remember that someone's still in there. Then with practiced calm, he wraps the mirror in cloth, ties it with string, and returns it to the hidden fold. You stand together now in the softest part of night, the part where even the shadows begin to feel sleepy. And as he turns back down the path, you don't follow out of curiosity anymore. You follow because somewhere deep inside, all that cloth and ritual and silence, he's carrying everything he can't bear to forget. The land beneath your feet crunches now loose gravel broken twigs, scattered leaves. A path rarely used even by those who still dare to walk. The city feels distant behind you. Only the wind and the sound of your own breath remain. The doctor steps forward slowly, his coat brushing against the undergrowth like a ship through tall grass. There's weight in every stride, like he's walking through memory itself, not just dirt. He pauses beside a broken stone bench, half sunk into the earth. On it lies a wax paper parcel, browned and sealed with twine. Not his. It's been here a while. He doesn't touch it. He just takes something from his own coat in response. A dried sprig of mint folded inside a square of cloth. He places it on the bench beside the parcel as though completing an exchange that was agreed upon long ago. Mint was once believed to calm the mind, freshen the air, ward off pestilence, or at the very least cover the stench of a body that had gone too long untended, and in some way placing it here feels like a blessing. Another gesture, another moment no one else will ever see. He doesn't linger. Further down the pit, he pulls something from a narrow inside slit, this one near his shoulder blade. You wonder how he even remembers where all these pockets are. What he produces next looks at first like a coin, but it's not. It's a tiny compass. The face is cracked. The needle spins lazily, uncertain. It doesn't even pretend to point north. Still, he watches it. Plague doctors weren't navigators in the traditional sense, but many carried charms like this: compasses, sundials, rings etched with coordinates. Some symbolic, some functional, some just reminders that orientation was still possible in a world turned upside down. Historians are unsure whether these were tools or talismans. But you understand now. It doesn't have to work to have meaning. He tucks it back into the seam, pressing the fabric closed with his palm, like he's sealing a wound. Then he moves again. The path opens into a field, a place where the grass hasn't been trimmed in years, if ever. At its center, a wooden post leaning left. Someone's carved a name into it, though time has mostly erased the lines. Here he stops again, and this time, from a pocket in the back of his belt, so cleverly hidden you almost miss it, he pulls a strip of linen cloth, rolled tight and bound with string. He unrolls it slowly. Inside, a set of handwritten names. Not the same list you saw earlier. These are different, fewer. Each name is written on its own strip of cloth. He removes one, then kneels beside the post and ties it there with the gentleness of someone dressing a wound. It flutters in the breeze. You want to ask who she was, but you don't. Some names are only spoken once, others never at all. He returns the roll of names to the belt pocket and rises. As he does, you hear a faint clink, a sound you haven't heard in a few sections now. It's not the jingle of his bells, it's the glass vial again. But this one's different. He retrieves it from a loop near his collarbone, an odd place to carry something so delicate, and uncorks it carefully. The scent hits you before you see it. Cinnamon and something else. Clove, maybe nutmeg, and the sharp, sour edge of citrus peel. This is pomander oil, or at least it's some version of it. A Plague-era favorite once used to fill little metal spheres worn around the neck or carried in hand. The idea was to create a personal cloud of good air strong enough to block out the bad. He dabs a drop onto the cloth lining his mask's beak. Not much, just enough to refresh it, just enough to believe it might make a difference. And then you guessed it, he tucks it back, cork tight, sealed again. The coat at this point feels more like a ritual map than a garment. Every fold has a purpose, every compartment has a memory, and just when you think he might be done, he reaches beneath the hem of his sleeve and produces a small square object. It's cloth-wrapped palm-sized. He unfolds it to reveal a locket, plain, metal, unadorned, no carvings, no initials. He opens it. There's no portrait inside, just a single curl of hair pressed flat against the backing, pale, almost silver. He stares at it for a moment, unmoving, then closes the locket and holds it tightly between his hands. A pause, then a breath, not audible but felt. He doesn't place the locket anywhere. This one stays with him. As he turns, you follow through the tall grass, stepping around half-buried stones and crumpled notes that have blown loose from long-lost pockets. You feel the coat's presence now, not just as a thing that hangs from his shoulders, but as something living. A second skin, a library, a memory too full to ever truly close. He stops once more and lifts something from yet another hidden sleeve. A single red thread wrapped tightly around his finger, like a promise. He unties it, then ties it again, this time around a branch of a crooked tree at the field's edge. You watch it sway barely, just enough to be real, and in that simple act you understand something unspoken. Everything he carries, every herb, every bone, every piece of cracked mirror and scrawled name isn't just about survival. It's about bearing witness. And you're no longer just a curious traveler trailing behind him. You're a keeper of what you've seen. A second set of eyes for what the world tried to forget. The red thread fades behind you, a fragile mark against bark and breeze. You don't look back, not because you don't care, but because somehow you understand, in the world of the plague, doctor looking back is rarely safe. Forward, always forward. One foot in front of the other, even when your coat is stuffed with sorrow. Ahead, a low wooden fence marks the edge of the field. Beyond it, a tiny cottage leans into itself, as if tired of standing. No light comes from the windows. The shutters are closed, the door left slightly ajar. He walks toward it, and as he does, you hear it again. That soft, careful rustling of cloth against cloth. The hidden shifting of things carried not for use, but for memory. He stops before the doorway and pulls something from the lining of his coat near his left hip. A small object, rounded, wrapped in faded blue cloth. He unwraps it slowly. Inside is a button, just a single button, mismatched, pearl-colored, cracked along one side. It's not for fastening anything. It doesn't belong to his coat. It belonged to someone else, and even though you'll never know who, you understand what it is, a remnant. The kind of thing you pick up after someone is gone. Something you find on the floor beside an empty bed or buried in the folds of a blanket you can't bring yourself to wash. He presses it to the doorframe, then slips it inside the cottage's mailbox, if that's what the dented metal box hanging from the post still qualifies as. Then he walks on, and you You feel the space that button once filled. He reaches a low stone wall, stops, and reaches into another of those endless pockets, this one under his right sleeve. His hand returns with the folded square of parchment, sealed with a blotch of wax that's cracked down the center. He tears it open. Inside is a drawing, a rough sketch of a house. Not this one, a different one, with a tree out front, and a dog maybe, or a sheep. The ink has bled, but the intention remains. It was someone's home, once, and now it lives here between the lining of his coat and the cage of his ribs. He tucks the paper back in without folding it again, lets it settle into its creases naturally, like a leaf returning to ground. You move through another patch of trees, their bare limbs swaying gently above. Somewhere in the distance, a raven calls once and then goes silent. As the doctor steps over a low root, you catch sight of something else, a small black book tucked into a high inside pocket near his collarbone. He hesitates, then removes it. The leather is smooth but cracked at the corners, held closed by a ribbon, not red, but white stained slightly with ink. He unties it, flips it open. You glimpse the pages, not records, not sketches, but questions. One per page, some crossed out, others left alone. Some pages are blank. One reads, "How many days can someone live with no one touching them?" Another, "If they don't cry, does it mean they don't feel?" Another still shaky, "Is this what duty feels like when it rots?" He doesn't linger on any one page, just flips, reading them with the quiet recognition of someone who's asked the same questions more than once. Then he closes the book, reties the ribbon, and returns it to the hollow above his heart. You don't ask who wrote the questions. You already know it doesn't matter. Next, he removes something from beneath the edge of his glove, a ring bound to a tiny leather loop and hidden against his wrist. It's iron, not decorative, not even sized for him. He rolls it between his fingers before slipping it into a small pouch hanging near his waist. The ring joins others there. You can hear them gently clink as it lands. You hadn't noticed the others before. He doesn't wear them. He keeps them. People used to give rings to plague doctors, tokens of trust, of thanks, of hope. Or perhaps as a final request. "Take this to my sister. This was my mother's. Promise me you'll remember." He did. He does. You keep walking. By now, you've stopped wondering what's real and what's symbolic. They're all real in their own way. You pass a grove of skeletal trees, the last of their leaves swirling on the path like confetti from a funeral no one attended. He steps over them, then crouches beside a hollow in the roots of one large oak. From the pocket nearest his knee, he pulls out a wax figurine, small, lumpy, shaped vaguely like a human figure. You almost laugh. It looks like something a child might make, but he sets it in the hollow with care, as though he's returned it to its birthplace. Wax figures were used in some regions as protective charms, carried in pockets, placed under pillows, buried beside homes. Some represented patients, others doctors. Some were simply something to hold when everything else was slipping away. This one. You think it might have been held often. The thumbprint on its back proves it. He stands, and just before leaving the grove, He reaches beneath the back of his collar and pulls free a folded square of black silk so soft it almost disappears in the night. He presses it once to the palm of his hand, then releases it into the wind. It floats, turns, and settles somewhere out of sight. You'll never find it again. Neither will he. And that's the point. Some things aren't meant to be carried forever. But the act of carrying them, that's where the meaning lives. You fall into step behind him once more and realize this isn't just about what's in the coat. It's about who he becomes with it, and who you do just by watching. The trees thin behind you, their shadows stretching like fingers that have finally let go. The night air feels cooler now, though not cold. Not biting, just calm. You've stopped counting how many things he's pulled from those endless pockets. And yet, you know there's more, because the coat is a confession whispered in layers, a body's worth of grief sewn into seams and hidden in creases. He doesn't limp, but you sense the weight. It's not fabric, it's memory. Ahead, a crumbling stone bridge crosses a narrow stream. The doctor steps onto it without hesitation. Water burbles below, not fast, but steady, like the world itself is trying to hum him to sleep. Halfway across, he stops, pulls something from a breast pocket. It's a folded square of cloth stained faintly orange in one corner. He unfolds it to reveal a handprint, a child's from the look of it. Two small fingers widespread the mark pressed into the fabric with some kind of ochre dye. He holds it for a moment. You almost expect him to cry, but he doesn't. He never does. Instead, he folds it back again carefully, the way one might fold a note they read every night before bed, and tucks it into a tin sealed with wax. The tin goes into a chest pocket directly over his heart. He resumes walking, and you follow, always a step behind, not to catch up, to witness. On the far side of the bridge, a wooden marker stands crooked in the ground, once a signpost, maybe now blank and weathered. He pulls a nail from the outer loop of his belt. Yes, a single iron nail, not rusted, not pristine. He holds it like a relic. Then, without a word, he hammers it once into the post with the butt of his fist. Not deep, just enough. Some say plague doctors marked territories this way, claimed them, blessed them, warned others. Others say the nails weren't for the land. They were for the soul. He doesn't explain. Of course he doesn't. He just walks on the clink of his coat, briefly louder with each step. The next item appears from a narrow slit sewn along the inner hem just above his boot. A glass lens cracked at one edge. It might have once been part of a spectacle, or a magnifying loupe, or even the eyepiece of a mask broken during work no one dared to witness. He holds it to the torchlight, briefly letting it catch the flame and scatter it in crooked rays. Then he tucks it beneath a stone at the base of a wall. A piece of something once meant to help him see, now left behind like a burnt-out candle. You walk on. The houses are gone now, even the tents. It's just fields and wind, and one man walking as if the sky owes him an apology it will never deliver. From a small stitched loop near his left wrist, he draws something odd. A button hook, slightly bent, The handle worn smooth, probably hasn't fastened anything in years. He turns it over in his gloved hands, and you realize it isn't a tool, it's a relic. Maybe it belonged to someone he helped or failed to help. Maybe he kept it as a reminder that once clothes were removed for reasons other than illness. It disappears into a belt pouch without a sound. And then comes the most unexpected thing of all. He stops beside a stump blackened by fire long past and kneels. From the inside lining of his coat, tucked beneath the final hidden flap behind his left shoulder, he pulls out a small bound bundle of letters, tied together with string. You watch him untie it slowly. One by one, he lays the pages out beside him, not to read, just to air them perhaps. The handwriting changes from letter to letter. Some are shaky, some bold. One is in pencil, barely legible now, another smudged with what might be tears. You see fragments. I hope you remember the cat's name. Tell him I wasn't afraid. The bread was still warm when you left. Don't wear yourself out for strangers. You can't breathe. He doesn't cry. He presses his hand to the top letter, then slowly gathers them again. Not in the same order, as if reshuffling the memories will somehow change the story. They return to their flap close to his spine, a place he cannot reach without effort. And maybe that's the point. The coat shifts again. Now he produces from a sleeve a tiny strip of bark carved with a symbol. You don't recognize it. Maybe no one does. He places it on a stone beside the path, doesn't explain. You're beyond needing explanation, because by now you know. He's not trying to be understood. He's just trying to carry it all long enough to let someone else see. And you've seen. He walks until the fields flatten and the wind grows still. Then from a pocket you never noticed, tucked against the inside of his right knee, he pulls one final thing, a small tin of salt. He unscrews the lid and lets a pinch fall into his hand, then slowly lets it fall from his fingers into the soil. Salt for cleansing, salt for memory, salt for wounds that never quite healed and never will, and with that the coat stills. He breathes in once long and turns to face the dark horizon. Nothing to say, nothing to prove, just pockets full of echoes, and a silence that finally makes sense. Dawn teases the edge of the sky, but doesn't quite arrive. It just lingers like a guest who stepped into the room and then forgot why they came. You walk on in this half-light, in this not-yet morning, trailing behind a man who seems to have always existed somewhere between beginning and end. The wind softens. The world feels paused. The doctor reaches the crest of a hill and stops. You do too. Below, a wide patch of earth has been freshly turned. A burial field, most likely. No markers, no stones, just rows of earth like punctuation carved into the land, full stops for stories that had no time to finish. You don't ask what he's looking at. You already know. He steps forward slowly and removes something from a long vertical seam stitched down the back of his coat. It's a bundle of string wound tightly around a stick of charcoal. As he kneels, he unwinds the string, then stretches it across a patch of the earth. From the same pocket, he draws a small slip of parchment. Written on it, 3 names. He places it flat in the dirt and uses the charcoal to draw a mark simple, sharp straight through the paper. Then, without hesitation, he burns it. The flame flickers, feeds on the dry parchment, then vanishes. The string is rewound. The charcoal returned. Some plague doctors performed rites like this, not sanctioned by any church, not recorded by any institution, but born from necessity, from the ache of too many bodies and too few rituals. Not everything sacred is official. The doctor rises. His knees creak. You're not imagining it. He's tired. From a pouch hidden along the interior waistband of his coat, he pulls out a folded hand-drawn sigil inked onto coarse cloth. You recognize the symbols from an earlier moment. Not religious, not astrological, not alchemical, just personal. It's frayed, folded many times. There are tiny stitch marks where he's tried to reinforce the corners. He doesn't place it anywhere. He just holds it, and in doing so seems to steady himself. Then he opens another pocket, an awkward one near the shoulder seam. It takes an effort to reach. Inside, a pressed flower, a violet, dried, brittle, but somehow still beautiful, still purple barely. It's tucked inside a folded leaf of parchment with a single word written on it, spring. He stares at it for a moment too long, then with a kind of resigned reverence, places it gently under a flat stone nearby, a promise buried in silence. Another breeze rises, and with it comes a new sound, the soft rattle of something hard against glass. He moves toward the wind, as if drawn by it, and removes from a small belt loop pouch a tiny glass jar. Inside teeth, small ones, baby teeth, not many, 4, maybe 5. You swallow. Plague doctors often collected tokens of the dead not out of morbid curiosity, but to fulfill requests, deliver to a family, return something tangible, or when that wasn't possible, to remember. This jar is sealed with wax, wrapped in cloth, marked with a single dot of ink. He doesn't open it. He doesn't need to. Instead, he nestles it between 2 tree roots along the path, presses earth over it with his gloved hand, and stands without brushing the dirt off. You're quiet now, not because you're afraid, but because you're full. He turns again, steps carefully along the slope of the hill until he comes to a tiny alcove in the rocks, probably an animal den long abandoned. From an almost invisible slit in the lining of his coat, he draws a wooden token the size of a coin. It's smooth, light, etched with a spiral. He places it in the alcove and steps back. A token of passage, a message to no one, or to anyone, or to himself. You stand beside him now. He's still, and then without looking, you see him reach into a new pocket. You almost didn't believe there could be more, but of course there is. From beneath the collar lining, he draws a slip of music, a bar, maybe 2 handwritten, tiny notes dancing across the page. No lyrics, just melody. He doesn't hum it, doesn't tap the rhythm, just holds it. Then slowly he slides it into a crack in the stone wall near the trail, presses it until it catches, and lets it go. Because even in the silence of plague and grief, there is still a song. It might be short, it might never be heard, but it was written, and that matters. He walks again, and now his steps grow slower, not heavier, just softer, like someone approaching the end of a ritual. He turns once more toward the horizon, still gray, still holding its breath, and reaches into the front of his coat one last time. From a flat interior pouch over his ribs, he removes a folded piece of blue thread wrapped around a small slip of paper. He unwinds the thread slowly. The paper reads only, "One day I hope to forget the sound." He folds it again, but this time doesn't return it to the coat. He hands it to you. Your fingers close around it, and suddenly the air feels different. Not warmer, but lighter, because now you carry something too, something real. He adjusts his coat once more. The pockets fall silent, for now, and as he takes the next step down the hill, you follow, one step behind, one story closer. The hill slopes gently downward, and each step feels like a slow exhale, like the land itself is beginning to breathe again. You follow him in silence, the small slip of paper still folded in your hand. You haven't looked at it again. You don't need to. The words are already stitched into the quiet. The doctor's coat sways softly as he walks, the sound now familiar, reassuring almost. You've begun to hear the things he doesn't say. He turns off the path toward an old garden wall. The stones are moss-covered and slumped like tired shoulders. At its base, a collection of rusted tools lies abandoned: a spade, a cracked terracotta pot, the handle of a wheelbarrow lost to time. He kneels by the wall, and from a pocket behind his right hip, stitched into the lining so deep you wonder how he even reaches it, he pulls out a small pouch of soil, tied with twine, damp, faintly fragrant. He loosens the knot, and with gloved hands presses a bit of the earth into the moss. Then he places a seed into it. Not labeled, not explained, just one. Then he pats the earth flat. You don't need him to say it. The seed isn't meant to grow. It's meant to promise, to insist against all odds that something might. He rises, and the pouch disappears back into his coat. The wall watches him go. Beyond it lies an overgrown path winding through low hedges and arching trees. He follows it with ease, as if he's been here before, maybe many times, maybe always. At the end of the path, where branches form a low canopy, he pauses again. This time, from a long vertical slit along the inside of his sleeve, he draws a glass prism, small, triangular, clouded at one edge. He turns it slowly, watching the pale light of early dawn scatter through it. Not brilliantly, not beautifully, but just enough. Historians once believed plague doctors carried prisms or mirrored objects to reflect bad light or confuse evil spirits. Others say the prism served as a way to observe wounds without looking too directly. But maybe, just maybe, it was to catch a little light, to remind them there was still something left to bend and scatter. He places the prism on a tree stump, aligning it so the morning light touches it first, and he walks on. The next object appears from the hidden pouch sewn into the collar seam, the kind only a tailor obsessed with secrets would think to create. He pulls out a bundle of human hair bound tightly with ribbon. Not long, not thick, but unmistakable. He doesn't look at it. He just holds it, and slowly, carefully, lets it fall into a hollow knot in the tree beside him. The ribbon flutters once, then stills. Hair is often the last part of someone that remains, the last thing to degrade, to go silent. Maybe this was someone's child, a friend, a stranger who didn't get to say goodbye. Now the tree remembers. The doctor walks again, and you realize he's not just dropping off objects. He's laying anchors, little pieces of weight placed with intention to keep the world from floating too far away. At the crest of the next hill, he pauses once more. From a flat inner pocket, he pulls out a strip of cloth no longer than a bookmark. On it, a single embroidered word: if. He doesn't place it. He doesn't bury it. He just presses it to the bark of a tree, holds it there for a breath, then folds it slowly and returns it to the pocket. It's not ready to be left behind. Neither is he. He turns toward a shallow brook. Now it is water moving clear and thin over stones. From a pouch at the base of his coat, stitched near the hem, he draws a small round stone, smooth, and painted with a faded symbol. You recognize it. It's the same spiral etched into that wooden token from before. He holds the stone to the light, then places it in the water and lets it go. It vanishes beneath the current. No splash, just silence. There's a story there, but you don't ask. You already carry enough. And then, almost casually, he reaches into a side seam just behind his left arm. Out comes a scrap of parchment curled at the corners, brittle from age. It's a letter, unsent. The ink is faded, but you see the first line: "Dear one, the world is crueler than we were taught." He doesn't read the rest. He doesn't need to. He tears the letter in half. One piece is folded and returned to his coat. The other, he lets it drift into the brook. The water takes it without hesitation. You step beside him now, no longer just following, but sharing. And he doesn't stop you. Instead, he reaches into the final pocket of this journey, one you've never seen him touch, the one closest to his throat, and from it, he draws a small cloth heart, stitched by hand, stuffed with lavender. Its seams are rough, uneven, the kind of thing a child might sew with trembling fingers. A charm, a gift. He presses it to the front of his coat just for a moment, then turns to you and places it in your hand. No words, no meaning explained, just this: you've walked far enough, you've seen enough, you can carry this part now. The coat sways gently in the wind, but for the first time, it feels a little lighter. You stand there a moment longer than you meant to, holding that small cloth heart in your hand, feeling the slight give of its seams, the dried lavender rustling faintly inside. It doesn't weigh much, and yet it feels heavier than it should. The doctor doesn't wait. He's already moving again, silent and sure, as though he's walked this path 1,000 times, and you were simply catching up to a memory. The coat drifts behind him like a shadow made of history. You follow. There's no other direction left. The terrain changes. The grass thins. Pebbles replace soil. The trees grow sparse and wind-bent, like they've leaned into sorrow so long they forgot how to stand straight. Somewhere ahead, water glimmers, still pale, reflecting nothing. You're approaching the marshlands now. You can smell it before you see it. Damp earth. something green and old, and the faintest trace of wood smoke from a village too far away to be reached in time. He stops beside a gnarled tree. You see something caught in the bark fabric, maybe. A child's ribbon faded almost white by sun and rain. The doctor doesn't touch it, but from the seam beneath his right glove, he pulls a slip of cloth no bigger than a fingertip with something embroidered in tiny red thread. A single letter L. He tucks it into the same fold of bark, not hidden, but not obvious, just left. A quiet offering, a thread in a vast invisible tapestry. From another inner flap, one pressed tightly against the curve of his ribs, he retrieves something else. It's delicate. You almost miss it. A silver pin, simple, unadorned, bent slightly at the end. He holds it up to the light, examines it, then crouches at the edge of the marsh. He pushes it gently into the soil, not deep, just enough to keep it from being carried off by the wind. There's no explanation, but you can imagine the story. Someone gave him this. Someone said, "Hold on to this for me." And he did, until now. He rises again. His coat rustles faintly, a sigh stitched into every seam. He walks forward, and this time you fall into step beside him. You don't speak, but he doesn't seem alone. The marsh hums faintly around you now. Crickets, frogs, the wind threading through reeds like fingers, through forgotten hair, and then in. Without warning, he stops and draws from a lower pocket something you hadn't expected to see. A toy, small, carved, wooden, a little horse missing one leg. The paint is chipped, one eye gone, but it's been carried with care, protected. He places it gently on a moss-covered stone, then leans forward and presses two fingers to the horse's back. Not a blessing, not a goodbye, just a memory made visible. He turns again, and you walk on. At the edge of the marsh, the ground softens. You step carefully now, the mud grabbing at your boots. The doctor moves as though he's floating, not hurried, not cautious, just present. From a side pouch that buckles near his thigh, he unclips a piece of string frayed at the ends, tied in a loop. 3 knots in it. No more. He holds it for a moment, then places it in the crook of a twisted root, presses it down with a flat stone. Historians might call that superstition. You call it keeping track of promises, of stories, of losses too long to say aloud. He walks again. His head tilts ever so slightly as the marsh opens into a clearing, a quiet place rimmed with reeds and rocks where the air finally stops smelling of anything at all. There he kneels, and from the backmost panel of his coat, near the base of the spine, he draws something wrapped in paper and oilcloth. He unwraps it carefully. Inside a mirror shard, jagged irregular about the size of your palm, he sets it in the grass before him, not to look at himself, but to let the sky look back. Mirrors were said to confuse spirits, to reflect evil, to protect the soul by dividing its reflection. But this one is for something quieter. He turns it just a little until the faintest glint of morning light catches on its edge. Then gently he covers it again and tucks it beneath a patch of moss. You feel your breath catch, not from fear, but because you realize you're watching someone lay themselves down piece by piece in the world. one object at a time, one ritual at a time, and somehow not disappear. He reaches into a coat flap stitched nearly into the seam beneath his arm and removes what looks like a tally stick, short carved, marked with notches, each one uneven, each one a story. He holds it between his gloved palms, then breaks it, clean, quiet. The two halves are set side by side beneath a stone at the edge of the clearing. You hear something then. Not a sound exactly, just the quiet changing shape. The doctor stands once more, and you do too, from a fold inside his collar, just behind the mask strap. He removes one final thing, a single feather, gray, soft, slightly curled. He holds it to the wind, then lets it go, and it doesn't fall, it floats. You watch it drift upward, caught by a breeze too small to feel, but strong enough to lift it out of reach. And you realize he's lighter now. The coat, though still full, no longer sags, no longer drags, because he's shared the weight with the ground, with the world, with you. You've been following a man unburdening himself the only way he knows how, by honoring everything that can't be saved, and remembering it anyway. The feather vanishes into the pale sky slowly, like a secret being carried away to somewhere it won't be asked to explain itself. The doctor watches it for a breath longer, then turns. And you go with him, not behind anymore, beside. Silently aligned, the path narrows again, hedged on either side by tall grasses and dew-glazed thistle. Your boots brush through them with soft hisses. The doctor moves like smoke, unhindered, directionless only in appearance. You notice the coat again, the way it shifts now. The pockets, many of them lighter, emptier, but not meaningless. He reaches into the side seam near the bottom hem, one of the few you haven't seen opened yet. From it, he draws a strip of cloth ribbon stiff with age. It's wrapped around something you can't quite see. He kneels at a tree stump and slowly unwinds it. Inside, a small brass bell, not ornamental, no carvings, no handle, just a bell worn smooth by time, by hands, by maybe too much silence. He holds it up by the thread, and it rings once softly. Barely a whisper, not the kind of sound that demands attention, the kind of sound that asks for permission. He ties it to a low branch on a tree whose bark is peeling in wide, dry strips. The bell sways gently, doesn't ring again. Then, from a buttoned pocket near his waist, he pulls out something that glints with old polish, a locket. No ribbon this time, no chain, just the locket itself, cold and slightly dented. He doesn't open it. He just sets it gently onto a stone, face up to the gray sky, and then he walks away. It stays behind, waiting for what you'll never know, and maybe that's all some memories ever do. He reaches a clearing dotted with wildflowers and dry reeds, then stops beside a patch of cracked pale earth. There he kneels again, from a hidden slot beneath his right shoulder blade, one so snug it seems part of his spine. He withdraws a rolled scrap of parchment tied with red thread. He unties it, unrolls it. The ink is almost gone, faded to the color of bruises. You can't make out the words, only their shape. You glance down and realize it's not a letter. It's a contract, old, fragile, perhaps one that gave him the job, or the one he wrote himself the day he stepped into this work. You don't know what it says, but the way he looks at it, you know exactly what it meant. He sets it flat against the dry ground, then pulls from another tiny, near invisible fold a piece of charcoal. He grinds it gently against the parchment until it breaks. The contract stays. The charcoal dust fades in the wind. He walks on. The land flattens, opens. The sky is softening now ever so slightly pale blue, brushing the gray like color, returning to a faded painting. The doctor removes something else. From beneath his chest plate lining, tucked so close to his ribs, it might have been mistaken for padding. He pulls a folded drawing. He opens it slowly. It's a face, sketched in shaky lines. The features are delicate, sad, but not scared. The kind of drawing done by someone trying to remember without letting grief warp the image. He holds it in his lap for a long moment, then places it against the trunk of a tree. No rock to hold it, no pin. He just trusts the wind to know what to do. The coat shifts again, and now he reaches deep into the very first pocket he ever opened, the one along his side where he kept the lancet and the coin and the scented sachet. He pulls out something he hasn't touched until now. A vial, stoppered, sealed. The liquid inside is dark, thicker than vinegar. You don't know what it is, and neither does he anymore. He uncorks it and lets a single drop fall into the grass. Then he corks it again and tucks it back. Some things, it seems, don't get left behind. Some things remain, not as burden, but as reminder. He stands, and in a rare, deliberate movement, he reaches behind his neck, beneath the collar seam, into a pocket no one else would know was there. He withdraws a length of cloth. Not just any cloth. It's patterned, familiar. A fragment of something that might have once been a sleeve, or a shawl, or a child's blanket. It's folded with almost painful care. The creases are perfect. It hasn't been touched in a long time. He presses it to his mask just beneath the beak, just once, and then places it in a shallow crevice in a broken wall beside the trail. The wind lifts one edge. He smooths it down. It stays. And so does the silence. Then, as if something unspoken has been completed, he begins walking again. This time, not down a road, not along a trail, but across a field where no path exists. The grass bends for him anyway, and as you follow, you realize this is where the map ends. Because from here on out, every step he takes is new. Every object remaining in that coat, still tucked into pockets that breathe with memory, is his to choose, to carry, to keep, or to pass on. The weight never disappears, but maybe it doesn't have to, because maybe it was never meant to be carried by one person forever. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe that's why he gave you that cloth heart. And maybe that's why, even now, you feel your own coat begin to grow heavier. The grass whispers around your ankles as you walk soft and slow. No path guides you now, only the memory of his movement ahead, parting the tall stalks like water. The doctor says nothing. Of course he doesn't. He just continues steady and quiet, as if the earth itself asked him to keep going a little longer. And you do too, even without a trail. You somehow know where he's headed. At the base of a distant hill stands an old stone arch, the kind that once framed a gate or a chapel door. Now it frames only air. Beyond it, nothing but open land, pale sky, and a horizon not yet touched by sun. He moves toward it, and as he does, you hear it again, that subtle shifting of weight, the sound of the coat breathing. Tired, yes, but still full of secrets. He stops just before the arch. From a tiny pouch near his ankle, stitched along the seam between boot and hem, he draws something narrow and wrapped in faded silk. He unties it, a paintbrush. The bristles are frayed, the handle chipped. This was not a tool of the trade, but a relic from before, or maybe between. He holds it with both hands, like it's delicate glass. Then from a side pocket, he removes a small corked bottle of pigment, dried, now no longer useful. Still, he uncaps it, tips the powder onto the brush, and drags a single dry stroke along the stone. No mark appears, but the gesture is what mattered, not the color. He wraps the brush again and places it in a hollow at the base of the arch. Some memories aren't made to be seen, only honored. He rises slowly, knees cracking faintly beneath the long coat. The sound makes you feel something you didn't expect. Tenderness. You look at the coat again, creased, patched, dulled from time. It no longer looks eerie. It looks earned. He walks beneath the arch now, and you follow without hesitation. On the other side, he reaches into one of the last unopened compartments of his coat, a pocket sewn just beneath the mask strap at the back of his head. From it, he pulls a tiny bellows, wooden, miniature, no larger than his palm, the kind you'd use to stoke a fire too small to catch on its own. He doesn't squeeze it. He simply sets it on the ground and places a stone beside it. Sometimes all you can do is leave behind the breath you don't have the strength to give. From another pocket, this one within his inner lapel, he removes a bundle of matchsticks bound with twine and sealed in wax paper. Unused, he holds them loosely, then lays them in the grass with great care. You see the pattern now. He's not shedding these things randomly. He's making stations, like a trail of breadcrumb prayers, not to be followed, but to remind the world he was here. He carried this. Now it's part of the earth. He walks to the edge of a shallow rise and pauses. Here he kneels again. From the smallest, tightest corner of his coat, one that seems to exist between two seams more than inside them, he draws a roll of bandages, not clean, not bloody, just used, not discarded, not forgotten. He unrolls them, 1 yard, then another, then gently, without tying or anchoring, he lets them rest in the grass, unraveled like a line of thoughts he no longer needs to hold in place. He sits beside them for a moment, not praying, not meditating, just existing. Then slowly, from a flat chest pocket, he removes a final scrap of music, different from the last. This one is written in multiple hands. You recognize a few of the notations, some sharp and jagged, others soft and looping. A song composed by many. He presses the page flat against a nearby rock. The wind lifts one corner. He doesn't stop it. He just watches. And as it catches, the air begins to rise. He lets it go. The music disappears over the hill, carried by wind you hadn't even felt. And then He stands, reaches into the inner lining of his sleeve, and draws out something you gave him. Yes, you recognize the fabric, the tiny stitch, the curve of your handwriting on the edge of the note you thought you lost. He carried it. All this time, without telling you, he folds it once, gently, then presses it into your hand. The coat rustles again softly. He begins to walk, but this time you don't follow. You stand still and watch, because this part is his alone. He crosses the open field. The wind tugs at the hem of the coat, now revealing lighter seams where weight once lived. Fewer bulges, fewer burdens, not empty, but no longer overwhelmed. And you realize the pockets never carried the cure. They carried the intention to show up, to keep walking, to carry what others could not, until someone else could carry it too. The coat disappears into the dawn haze. You're left holding the note, and the cloth heart, and the memory of every pocket. And for the first time in this long, quiet journey, you don't feel like a guest anymore. You feel like the next keeper. The mist rises to meet the light, and for a moment, the line between earth and sky dissolves. The field is empty now. No footprints, no coat flapping against the wind, no sound except for the soft stir of air moving through tall grass. But you're not alone. Not really. The cloth heart is still in your hand. The note, too, folded tightly, smudged from your grip. It feels warm now, like it absorbed the quiet weight of everything you've seen. You stand there, the last thread, in a very long seam, and the morning settles around you. And then somewhere far off, you hear it. A faint, familiar jingle. Not from ahead, from behind. You turn, and in the shadows of the trees, something moves. Not the doctor, but another figure, smaller, wrapped in a patchwork of cloth, mismatched boots, eyes wide and blinking under the edge of a hood. They step into view slowly, awkwardly, like someone wearing clothing not quite their own. They're not masked, not yet. You recognize that look, that first step, and you understand someone else has picked up the trail. You move toward them not quickly, but confidently, the way you were taught in silence by every step of the man who walked before you. As you draw closer, you notice something clutched in the stranger's hand. A glass charm, smooth blue, shaped like a teardrop. You've never seen it before, but you know instantly it came from him. The doctor, left for them as he once left something for you. You reach into your coat, your new coat. You hadn't even realized you were wearing it. But you are, not his, not an exact copy, but something stitched slowly into existence through experience. The cloth heart slides easily into one of its inside pockets. The note, too. The coat receives them like it's always known they were coming. You nod once at the new traveler, and they nod back. No words, just the knowledge they will walk now. You step aside, letting them pass, then turn in a new direction. It's your turn after all. You begin walking toward a different grove, one you hadn't noticed before. Something pulls at your coat slightly as you go. The weight is new, shifting. You reach into the front pocket. Your fingers brush something soft. A handkerchief, not yours, not recent. There's a name embroidered along the edge, half faded, the thread pulling loose. It shouldn't be here, but it is. The coat holds more than your memories now. It holds his. It holds theirs. And so you keep moving. The sun finally crests the hill behind you, bathing the field in gold. Not warm yet, but promising. You approach the grove. The trees are low and close together, their branches curving like ribs around a forgotten rib cage. Beneath the largest trunk lies an old wooden box. You kneel beside it and lift the lid. Empty. Waiting, you remove the handkerchief, fold it gently, and place it inside. From another pocket, you retrieve the matchsticks. You hadn't realized they were there, and yet they are. You add those too. The box receives each piece like a memory being tucked into a drawer. This is how it begins. You don't need a ritual. You are the ritual. You are the one who shows up. You are the one who carries what others have set down. You close the box. Dust settles over it again, soft and unhurried. You rise, and the coat settles around your shoulders. Familiar now, comfortable. The wind brushes against your face, and somewhere in the distance, another bell rings. You smile. There are more things to carry, more paths to walk, more people who will one day follow, and when they do, they will find you, just as you found him, and they will know from the jingle in your step, from the quiet in your breath, from the way your coat moves gently through the world, that someone was here and chose to remember. You leave the grove behind the wooden box, tucked beneath the roots, invisible now to anyone who doesn't know to look. But you know, and that's enough. The coat moves with you no longer stiff or strange. It bends with your shoulders, sways with your steps. A second skin grown out of memory, ritual, and ash. You walk with purpose now, not to chase the past, but to meet whatever waits ahead, hands empty, pockets ready. The field narrows into a path once more, barely there, just a thread in the grass. And there, half buried in the dirt, you spot it. A nail, iron, bent slightly, pressed into the soil like a signature fading in the rain. Not left by you, not by him, someone else. You kneel beside it, and from your left sleeve, somehow perfectly placed, you draw a match, one of the ones he left behind. You press it gently into the ground beside the nail, not to light, just to balance the old with the new. The earth accepts it, quietly. You rise. Ahead the sky opens wide, and the air carries a hush that feels like a held breath, the kind of silence that listens back. At the edge of the path, you see something hanging from a branch a length of twine, frayed, faded, tied in a perfect loop. You recognize the knot, his. You reach up and run your finger along the fibers. It doesn't crumble, it waits. So you do what he would have done. From your chest pocket, you pull out a page blank, not because you have nothing to say, but because it's not time yet to say it. You tie it to the twine with a single knot, soft and slow. Let it sway. Let it wait for the words that haven't yet arrived. Not all stories need to be written at once. You move again, coat brushing through the reeds. The trail climbs a little, and you follow it toward the high ridge overlooking the marsh. Below, you see the glint of water, the quiet press of morning mist folding into the land. And then a cough, not loud, but human. You freeze. There beneath a tree half hidden in shadow is someone sitting, slumped, hooded, breathing barely. You approach slowly. They look up, their faces pale, eyes tired. They're wrapped in cloth, shivering, holding on to something you can't see. They don't speak, but you don't need them to. You've seen this moment before. From the inner seam of your coat, you pull out a sachet of herbs. He used to carry these. Now so do you. You press it into their hand. They don't thank you. They just hold it tight like warmth. You remove a square of cloth from your inside coat, lining lavender-stitched, hand-mended soft from age, and gently place it over their shoulders. You don't wait to be asked. You just do. And when you step back, you see a thread of recognition in their eyes. They've seen someone like you before, and now so have you. This isn't healing. This is holding, and sometimes that's more. You walk on. Your coat feels heavier again, but it's the right kind of weight. You reach a bend in the path and sit beneath a tree where the bark has been carved into with symbols old and uneven. You take a deep breath, and then from your back pocket, a new one that wasn't there before you draw a pencil stub. You don't remember placing it there, but you're not surprised. You rest the pencil on your knee, pull out a scrap of cloth, and finally write something. Just a word, maybe two. You don't read them aloud, but they live now. They exist. And when you tuck the cloth into the crook of the tree, you know someone else will find it, and they will understand. You rise again, and the coat moves with you, as if it's growing not heavier, but fuller, because now it holds yours too. Your rituals, your stories, your willingness to walk toward the broken places. And if you ever doubt it, all you'll need to do is reach into any pocket. And remember, you are part of the line now, not just following it, extending it. You continue walking through that pale hush of morning, the coat settling into you like breath. You no longer wonder where the trail leads, because you understand now. The trail isn't something you find, it's something you make. Each step, each object left behind, each moment of silence, offered like a balm to a broken world, is a thread. And now you carry the spool. The wind picks up slightly, carrying with it a faint scent, something herbal nostalgic. A trace of rosemary, maybe mint. You recognize it not by name, but by feeling. It smells like memory, and then you see it. A tree, tall, skeletal, leafless, but not dead, standing alone in a clearing. At its base lies a bundle of fabric, soft and sun-bleached, carefully wrapped around something round. You kneel and gently unfold the cloth. Inside is a stone, smooth, flat, painted with a circle, not left by you, not left by him. Someone else has passed through. The line continues. You add something of your own, a piece of thread pulled from your sleeve's inner lining. You tie it once around the stone, just enough to say, "I was here too," and then you wrap it back and leave it as you found it. Untouched, but touched. As you rise, a sound catches your ear, far off but distinct. Footsteps. You turn, expecting the one from before, but it's no one, not yet. Still, you feel it in your bones, they're coming, and you feel something else. Your own coat beginning to make space. A pocket you hadn't noticed before rests just beneath your rib cage. You slide your hand in and find something you didn't place there. A small worn cork. You don't recognize it, but it feels right. You smile slightly and return it to its place. It's not always about understanding what you carry. Sometimes it's about trusting that you needed to carry it. You continue forward. A wooden bridge stretches across a stream, a thin ribbon of water weaving lazily through the field. As you cross, you pause and remove a matchstick from your pouch, one of the last. You strike it against the wood, just for the light, just for the warmth. You don't set fire to anything. You don't leave a scar. You let it burn down to your fingers and flick it gently into the water. A soft hiss, and silence again. On the other side, the ground flattens into a wide plain grass, bending like breath across the earth. Here, the sun finally rises. Not full, but enough. You stand in that light a moment. Let it find your face. Your coat absorbs it, too warming, softening. You can almost hear the leather relax. And then from the inside of your sleeve, something begins to slide free on its own. You catch it. A drawing. Yours. One you made a long time ago before this journey, before the coat, before the walk. You don't remember placing it in the pocket, but there it is, a sketch of someone standing in a field coat, open to the wind, holding a small heart in their hand. You blink, then fold it once, twice, and place it gently beneath a stone nearby. It was never meant to stay with you forever. It just needed to make the journey, just like everything else. Ahead, the horizon glows golden. You take a step toward it, and the coat moves easily now. The weight has shifted, rebalanced. Nothing is gone, only carried differently. And then, you hear another sound, a soft clink. You reach into the side pocket behind your hip. Inside a key, old, iron, cold. You have no idea what it opens, and that's okay. You hold it for a moment, feel its shape, then place it on a branch beside the path. Someone will come, someone will need it, and you're already full again, because that's how it works. You give, you carry, you leave behind, not to forget. But so someone else can begin. The wind shifts behind you, warm now, like breath on the nape of your neck. You don't turn around. You don't need to. The past is there, folded into the seams of your coat, not haunting you, but walking with you. You keep moving. The field softens underfoot, grass giving way to sandy soil flecked with sea salt and crushed shells. The land slants downward now, toward the coast. You can hear the distant hush of water, steady, rhythmic, like the long inhale before sleep. You walk toward it, not because you're told, because it's time. As the path bends, you reach a small cove where the tide laps at smooth stones. At the edge sits an old, overturned boat, half buried in the sand. Someone once meant to fix it, but never did. You kneel beside it and reach into the inner fold of your collar. From the narrow space sewn into its curve, you pull out a tiny bottle, stoppered, sealed with wax, and filled with something that looks like smoke caught in glass. You don't uncork it. You just set it gently in the bow of the boat and leave it there, like a message to a shoreline you may never reach. Then, from a flap at your wrist, you draw a square of cloth, not embroidered, not labeled, but soft, so very soft. You lay it across a smooth stone and press your hand into it once. No ink, no symbol, no proof, but the weight of your presence settles there, and it will stay. Rising now, you feel your coat shift again. Another pocket you'd forgotten this one near the left shoulder. You reach in, pull out a string of buttons, some mismatched, some chipped, all tied together like a strange little rosary. You've no idea who they belonged to, but they belong to someone. You drape them from a branch just above the beach. Let them sway and clink. The sound is faint, familiar, a song without melody, just rhythm. You move on feet, sinking slightly into the sand. The sun is full now, but soft, gentle, like it's learned how to shine without burning. You follow the coastline until you reach a bend in the dunes where driftwood and seaweed have gathered into natural sculpture. Beside it lies a flat stone. Someone's placed a white feather there, not you, not him. Another traveler. You sit. From the lining of your left boot, stitched so subtly you almost forget it exists. You pull out a piece of red string. You tie it to the feather, a connection, a continuation, then leave it resting there, a tiny altar at the edge of nowhere. You feel the sea breeze settle into your coat now. The fabric breathes with it, lighter, not emptier, never that, just clearer. And for the first time you reach into a pocket, and it's empty, not forgotten, finished. You smile. You walk again, not to reach something, but to be something. A presence, a vessel, a place where memory lives with room to breathe. You cross a narrow stretch of rocky beach and find a hollow between two stones. From your coat's back panel, once heavy with everything you couldn't carry aloud, you remove a folded page. It's blank. You've carried it the entire time, not for what it says, but for what it could. You fold it one more time and wedge it between the stones. Let the sea take it. Let the wind read it. Let the next person wonder what it meant, because they'll understand. The message was never the words. The message was the act of carrying, of placing, of remembering. You rise again. Not every moment is dramatic. Sometimes they're small, like this one. You reach into the coat's deepest fold, near your spine, once the heaviest, most burdened part, and remove a small, flat mirror shard. Not his, yours. You hold it to the sky. Let it reflect the blue, then place it on a shell angled upward and walk away. Let someone else find their reflection in your stead. Let someone else see themselves the way you once saw him. The coat is still full, but it doesn't drag anymore. It doesn't sag or pull. It carries with you now, not on you, a memory, a ritual, a second skin, and you're walking not toward an ending, but toward the next beginning. The sea fades behind you now, its rhythm retreating like a lullaby finishing the final verse. The path curves inland once again, winding through fields that sway softly in the early light. Every blade of grass seems to nod in agreement. Yes, this is the way. And the coat, it moves like it's always been yours, not borrowed, not inherited, earned. As you walk, your fingers drift along the seams, not searching for pockets, but remembering them, the ones you've emptied, the ones still holding something, the ones that have opened themselves without your asking. You reach the top of a small ridge, and there, resting in the dirt, like it grew from the earth itself, is a worn leather journal. Someone left it here, someone meant for you to find it. You sit beside it. Gently, you open the cover. The first page is blank. The second holds a single sentence, handwritten in soft, slanted ink. The coat always finds the ones willing to carry. You nod, closing the book carefully, and from your inside breast pocket, where you've kept so many things tucked against your heartbeat, you withdraw a piece of twine, knotted 3 times ends frayed. You wrap it around the journal once, then twice, and tie it closed. This one's not yours to read, only to deliver. You rise again, and the grass parts before your steps. The air smells of sage now, or maybe just the memory of it, sharp, clean, earthy. From your wrist flap, so often used for quick access, you draw a metal clasp, like the kind used to fasten a satchel or a mask strap. Slightly bent, still strong. You crouch beside a tree that's grown sideways from wind and time, and press the clasp into the bark where it splits. It fits like it always belonged there. You take a breath, keep walking. Each footfall feels quieter now, not out of caution, but confidence. You're not sneaking through this world anymore. You're part of it. The trail narrows through a grove of pale-barked trees. Their trunks shimmer faintly in the light, as though dusted with memory. As you pass between them, you reach into your left hip pocket. There, your fingers close around a key ring. 4 keys, none labeled. You didn't put them there, but you've carried them. And now it's time. You stop at a tree with a hollowed base, just wide enough for the ring to rest inside. You place the keys in the hollow, let them go. Whatever they once opened, they'll open again someday. For someone else, you continue on. And now, with every step, the coat feels more responsive, like it's learning you, adapting. Its silence is no longer heavy. It's shared, and from that silence you hear something familiar, a bell, small, close. You reach a wide stone nestled in the earth, carved faintly with initials too faded to read. And there, dangling from a twig above it, is a single bell tied with white string. Not yours, but not forgotten. You reach up. Add to it a strip of fabric torn from your coat's lining, a seam that had long been too tight. A trade, a release. The bell jingles once, then quiets. You walk further. The wind picks up slightly, and with it comes the scent of smoke. Not fire, but hearth. Warmth, familiarity. You follow it, and reach the edge of a clearing where a small stone circle rests in the grass. An old fire pit, cold now, but not abandoned. From your inner coat flap, the one over your heart, you remove a pine cone dried and cracked. It's small, insignificant looking, but you've carried it for days. Maybe longer. You place it in the pit, not to burn, but to be ready, in case someone else needs warmth later. The coat settles once more. Only a few things remain now, not because the journey is over, but because it's begun to change shape. Ahead, the trail splits into 3 directions, none marked. You stand at the crossroads, and the coat guides you, not with force, not with urgency, just a subtle pull toward the center path, the one not worn down, the one that hasn't yet been walked. You follow, not to be a follower, but because that's where your trail is meant to begin. As you walk, you reach into your last unopened pocket, the one inside your glove near your palm. There you find a single bead, amber, smooth, warm. You pause. Place it gently in the crook of a tree root, pressed beneath a fallen leaf. A final note left in the quietest key. Then you take a deep breath, stand straight, and keep going, not to complete something, but to continue it, because the coat may be quieter now, but it's still full of echoes, and you are one of them. The trees thin once again, and the earth shifts beneath your feet, firmer now, sun-dried and cracked in places. The path you walk isn't worn, but it welcomes you anyway, as though it recognizes your weight. The coat rustles in the wind, no longer heavy, no longer full. It speaks differently now, not in creaks and clinks, but in the soft hush of readiness, of space made available. You realize something as you move forward. You're not carrying less, you're carrying differently, more like soil than burden, more like memory than stone. Up ahead, a low wall rises, moss-covered and sunlit. On it, a small stack of stones, not arranged precisely, not sacred, just set there one at a time. You add one. From your front pocket, where your hand had rested for the past hour, without knowing why you remove a button. Simple, wooden. 2 holes, you place it atop the stack. Not because it matters, because it does. You sit on the wall for a moment, letting the morning stretch across your skin like a shawl. You close your eyes, you listen. There's wind, there's bird song. There's no bell this time, but you still hear him. The way he paused beside a grave and didn't speak. The way he lifted each object like it was the last thing he'd ever touch. The way he walked, not toward a finish, but toward a responsibility. You rise again, and your fingers brush the inside of your sleeve. There's something tucked there you'd forgotten. It's a scrap of paper creases, worn corners bent. You unfold it. It's blank. At first, but in the light you see embossed letters, almost invisible. The coat will carry what you cannot, and you run your fingers across the words, then fold it again. You tuck it back into the sleeve, not because you need it now, but because you know there will be a day when you will. The path slopes upward, slightly winding through a meadow scattered with tiny purple flowers. They brush your boots as you pass. One catches in the hem of your coat. You leave it there. You don't need to take in everything with you. Sometimes it's enough to let the world offer what it will. You pause beside a tree with bark that peels in long spirals. It feels ancient, not old like centuries, but old like memory. You press your palm to it. Feel the cool. Then from a seam near your spine, the place that once carried so much, you draw out a coin. Not gold, not silver, worn smooth by fingertips and thought. You place it between 2 knots in the tree's bark. Let it nest there. A thank you unspoken. You move on. The trail narrows between 2 stones, and for a moment you feel the wind change again. There's a rhythm to it, one you recognize but cannot name. You reach into your left chest pocket, the one you hadn't opened since that night under the stars. Inside, a thread spool nearly unwound, just a few loops left. You pluck a strand from it no longer than your hand and tie it around your ring finger. Then you slip the spool into a crevice in the rocks. Someone will find it. Someone will finish the thread. The land flattens again into a wide clearing, a circle ringed by trees open to the sky, and at the center, a stone chair, worn smooth. You sit, let the coat fold around you, let the morning settle. You reach into your right sleeve. There's nothing there, not emptiness, just completeness. You smile. Then from the pocket at your waist, stitched in place, with the first thread you ever pulled from the coat, you draw one last object. A note carefully folded, weathered, but whole. You don't open it. You don't need to. You've carried it all this time, not to read but to remember. You tuck it beneath the stone seat, like placing a book back on the shelf. Then you rise, step once more into the path, and the coat, it feels exactly as it should. Like it's yours, the trees begin to part. The clearing behind you shrinks with each step like a dream you've just woken from, but it hasn't left you. It lingers in the seams of your coat, in the warmth on your back, in the quiet you now carry inside. The trail turns once more, not sharply, just enough to remind you that this journey is still unfolding, that every end is just a place where breath slows for a moment before continuing. The sun rests higher now, not blinding, but certain. It lights the landscape without asking anything of it. And the coat, it accepts the light. You pass a cluster of smooth stones stacked beneath a tree. Each one bears a single mark, some scratched, some burned, some painted long ago. Not names, not symbols, just moments. Someone was here, someone paused, someone felt. You stop too, not because you're tired, but because you should. From a side seam near your left hip, one of the first pockets you opened, you pull out a strip of waxed cloth. Folded inside it, a single dried leaf, still faintly green. You don't remember placing it there, but you know what it means. You press it gently between two of the stones. No weight, no ceremony, just presence. You walk on. And now each step feels familiar, not because you've walked this path before, but because you've become the path. You don't just wear the coat now, you inhabit it, you embody it. Ahead, an old fence line appears, weathered wood, leaning against time. You follow it until you find the gate. It hangs askew, fastened by a rusted hinge and hope. You stop. From the smallest pocket inside the cuff of your glove, you draw a pin, bent, tiny, still strong. You wedge it gently into the hinge. The gate doesn't swing freely, but it will now hold just a little longer. That's all we can ask for. A little longer. The road shifts to gravel stones, crunching beneath your boots. You hear birds now, some distant, some near. The world feels louder, but not in a way that pushes you away. It welcomes you. You reach a low bench, barely more than a plank of wood, nailed between two rocks. There's a jar resting on the ground beside it. Empty, clean, waiting. You sit, not to rest, but to mark the moment. And from the inner lining of your coat, tucked beneath the right lapel, you retrieve a matchbook. The last one. You don't strike it. You simply place it in the jar, close the lid, and leave it there. There are enough fires now. You rise, keep walking. The trees return, just a few widely spaced, standing like sentinels rather than a forest. You reach one with a scrap of red cloth fluttering from a branch. You recognize the knot, not yours, but not unfamiliar. You stand beneath it for a while, not searching, just remembering. Then from the innermost pocket, stitched into the lining of your collar, where your pulse rests closest, you withdraw the final object, a feather. White, not perfect, bent at the tip, but still capable of flight. You tuck it into a crevice at the base of the tree, and as you do, you realize you have nothing left to place, No more objects to retrieve, no more weight to move. And yet you don't feel empty, you feel complete. Because the coat, for all its pockets and pouches and hidden folds, was never about what you put inside. It was about what you were willing to carry, to hold for others, to release when the time came. The sun filters through the trees, tracing the edge of your coat like a memory of warmth. You stand a little straighter, breathe a little deeper, and keep walking. Now the trail opens wider, leading toward a horizon brushed with gold. You don't know where it ends. But that's not the point. The coat fits perfectly now, not because it was made for you, but because you've grown into it. You don't need new pockets anymore, just space. Space to offer, space to hold, space to remember. And when the next person appears lost, unsure, trembling beneath the weight of what they've picked up, you'll know exactly what to do. You'll reach into your coat and say nothing because you'll understand. Some gifts are better when given without words. The horizon doesn't rush you. It waits, stretching out in golden light, the sky rippling with a quiet that feels earned, not forced, not empty. Just settled, you step into that stillness like someone returning home, though you've never seen this place before. The coat hugs your shoulders gently, not like a burden, like a belonging. You walk until the path fades entirely, until you're simply moving forward on intuition alone. Your boots leave prints in soft soil. A breeze pushes at your back not hard, just enough to remind you that forward is still the way. And then, in a small clearing nestled between low hills and sky, you see it, a figure, not masked, not cloaked, not burdened. They sit on a log, hands resting in their lap, staring at the grass in front of them, like it might whisper the next line of their story. They don't notice you at first, but then they look up. You stop a short distance away. They nod, and you nod back. No questions, no greetings. You reach into the coat, though you thought you'd emptied it. Somehow your fingers find something still waiting, a scrap of ribbon tied in a loop, soft, blue, frayed at the edges. You walk forward slow and extend your hand. The figure takes it without speaking, and in that simple act you feel it, the handoff. Not of knowledge, not of answers, but of willingness. They slide the ribbon into a pocket you don't see. Their coat, lighter, smaller, simpler, is only just beginning to shape around them. You understand, so you sit beside them. Just for a moment. You don't teach, you don't advise. You just let them feel that they are not alone, that someone has walked before them, that someone will walk after them. And when you rise, your coat rises with you, its folds catching the wind like sails. The figure watches you go, not for guidance, but for reassurance. They will begin soon. And you keep moving, one step at a time. Not because you need to get somewhere, but because this is what you do now. You carry, you listen, you lighten where you can. A small bird chirps overhead. The first you've heard all morning. It doesn't sing, just a quick note like punctuation. The trail begins again, but not behind you, beside you, as though you're walking with an old friend newly returned. One you missed without realizing, one who was never quite gone. You follow the rise of a hill. The wind tugs at your sleeves now playfully. And just before you crest the top, you turn to look behind you. No one's there, but the field holds your steps. The tree holds the feather, the stone still bears your warmth, and somewhere, someone else has just reached into their coat and found their first object. You turn back toward the sun and take the next step. The hilltop greets you like an old friend, arms open, voice quiet. From here, you can see everything behind you, the path, the stones, the trees with the offerings tied to their branches, the shimmer of water far off where you left the mirror and the feather and that single trembling reflection. But you don't linger. Not for long. You're not the same person who began this walk. You're not even the same person who crested the last hill. Because the coat you wear now doesn't just carry items. It carries intention. It carries restraint. It carries enough. The wind plays with the hem as you descend the other side, brushing through tall grass that bends to let you pass. The light is warmer now, softer. A village lies ahead, small, still, alive. You approach slowly. You're not there to fix anything. You're not there to teach or warn or heal or save. You're there to be. And sometimes that's the most important role of all. Someone steps out of a doorway. A child may be 8 or 9. Their eyes are wide, not with fear, not with awe, just with curiosity. They step forward. You kneel the coat folding easily with your motion, as if it's been waiting for this moment all along. You reach into your left chest pocket and find nothing, but that's exactly what you were hoping for. Because this time, you don't offer something already prepared. You simply extend your hand, palm open. The child doesn't hesitate. They place something in your hand, a stone smooth and dark and warm from their fingers. You smile and press it gently into your own coat pocket, the one that just opened up right then, as if the coat knew it's time to make space. You stand, nod once, they nod back. You continue on past houses and quiet windows through the heart of the village, where people glance your way not with suspicion or reverence, but recognition. They know coats like yours. They remember him, and now they'll remember you. At the edge of the village, a narrow bridge crosses a creek. On the other side, a field of tall reeds rustles like an audience waiting for the story to begin again. You pause, turn back, and take from the inner seam of your collar, where your pulse still lives, one last item, a letter. You never wrote it. You never read it. But it's real. You place it gently on the railing of the bridge, weighed down with a smooth pebble, and walk on. You don't look back. You don't need to, because the coat no longer clings. It no longer guards. It no longer weighs. It simply holds, the way arms do when someone finally leans into them. The path ahead is unmarked. There's no gate, no arch, just light and land and wind. You walk forward, and with each step the coat rustles softly, not as a burden, but as a companion, not because it's full, but because it's alive. And every pocket tells a story, and every story matters. And now it's your turn to carry. And someday, when the wind is right, you'll stop and place your last offering and leave the coat for someone new, but not yet. For now, you walk, and the world walks with you. Now let your body soften, sink into your bed or your chair or wherever you find yourself resting. You've walked a long way tonight through memory and silence and the slow unfolding of weight made visible. Breathe gently. The coat is quiet now. Its pockets for the moment are still, its sleeves relaxed. Its seams no longer tight with tension. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands go still. Everything that needed to be carried has found its place either in the earth or in the wind or in the open palm of someone just beginning their own walk. You did not fix everything. You did not need to. You showed up. You listened. You left space for the sacred, and that was enough. Feel the air move slowly over you, the sound of your own breath, the hush of the world when it finally understands it's being held, not controlled. You are not alone. You never were. Close your eyes. The coat is folded beside you now, soft worn and willing to wait. Let it rest. Let yourself rest. You don't need to carry the whole world tonight. You just need to breathe. And tomorrow when you wake, the path will still be there. And your coat, it will still fit, exactly as it should.